A violent burst of energy marked the universe's beginning. Light spread outward as existence took form, observed by a silent figure contemplating its origin. Over billions of years, matter gathered. Galaxies formed from drifting dust. Time passed, shaping worlds beneath vast skies. Planets settled into place as the universe continued its silent expansion. If the stars became a clock, their movement would compress eternity into a single hour. Within that scale, human history occupied only a fraction, vanishing almost instantly against the vast flow of time. Humanity advanced within a brief span, building settlements and forging weapons as knowledge steadily grew. Amid that progress, countless individuals trained their bodies, refining martial arts through relentless effort. Conflict soon followed, as armies clashed and history filled with violence and bloodshed. Beyond human struggle, legends emerged of warriors facing beasts and divine forces, their strength shaping what lay ahead. After all that accumulation of power and time, a quiet moment remained, leaving a presence observing and measuring existence. Retsu Kaioh regained awareness, his body lying unfamiliar yet intact upon solid ground. A sudden brightness filled his vision as large figures surrounded him, raising heavy tools in unison. His focus sharpened, observing their movements with precision as their strength gathered into each strike. The repeated impacts echoed loudly, their coordinated force driving power into a single point. Understanding followed quickly, as he recognized the act as simple labor, watching their effort with calm attention. A beast-like figure offered food to Retsu, presenting it with a calm and welcoming gesture. He observed the surroundings, noticing unfamiliar people and customs while questioning the nature of the gathering. The rhythmic pounding continued, suggesting a shared activity rather than conflict. Faces in the crowd revealed varied features, unlike anything he had known before. A realization settled in, as he recognized the absence of familiarity, confirming he had entered a completely different world. Retsu observed armored figures and strange beings, realizing their appearances differed greatly from anything familiar. A vast structure rose before him, resembling a foreign civilization unlike his homeland. Moving through the area, he noticed various individuals, each carrying unique traits and attire. From above, the city stretched endlessly, filled with unfamiliar architecture and countless lives. A realization settled within him, as he examined his body, sensing restoration while questioning his situation. Retsu tested his body, realizing his lost leg had been restored, contradicting his past injuries. Pain spread through him, awakening memories embedded deep within his body and mind. A clear image surfaced, recalling the intense confrontation that once pushed him to his limits. That memory sharpened into motion as he remembered the decisive clash against a powerful opponent. The sequence completed itself, confirming the path that led him here and linking his present state to that final battle. Retsu examined his body, recalling the fatal wounds that should have ended his life. Despite that memory, he moved through a strange city, finding himself completely restored. Doubt grew as he questioned the reality around him, unsure if it was an illusion or truth. People passed by with unfamiliar appearances, deepening his sense of displacement. Before him, monstrous beings appeared, confirming this world was far beyond anything he once knew. Beast-like figures revealed hostility, their expressions turning aggressive as tension rose around Retsu. Without hesitation, he moved forward, calmly passing through them while ignoring their intimidation. A sudden presence approached from behind, aiming to strike with speed and force. Retsu sensed the attack instantly, his awareness sharpening as danger closed in. He reacted with explosive power, launching a decisive strike that overwhelmed the attacker in a single motion. Retsu's strike landed with full force, crushing the attacker's head and ending the movement instantly. The body collapsed beneath him, blood spreading across the ground as the impact left no chance for survival. Retsu steps forward as the black-haired young man lunges recklessly. Speed lines cut across the clash, while Retsu shifts his body slightly, avoiding the strike without retreating. A fierce grin spreads across Retsu's face, eyes wide and focused. Pressure builds in the air as he channels controlled force toward his opponent. His fist stops just before the young man's face. No contact is made, yet invisible power surges outward. Air pressure alone crushes the nose, forcing blood to spill. Shock overwhelms the young man as blood pours down his chest. Retsu studies his unmoving fist, sensing something unusual in the result. Across from him, the black-haired young man trembles, blood leaking through his fingers. Confusion spreads over his face as he struggles to understand what struck him. Bystanders recoil while Retsu holds his stance. The young man's body jerks violently as the invisible force finishes its path. Silence replaces the shock. Retsu lowers his gaze, unsettled by the outcome. Blood drips steadily as the defeated fighter recalls his martial arts past, realizing the vast difference in power. Posters of dojos and champions cover the walls as a trainee forces himself through another set, counting with fading breath. His body trembles during push-ups, sweat falling onto the floor while memories of martial arts, legends surround him. A poster of a famed karate master catches his eye, reminding him of the strength he once admired and pursued. Muscles strain as he pushes toward 100, arms shaking under his own weight. Strength finally abandons him, and he collapses onto the mat, frustration mixing with exhaustion. The trainee forces his arms outward, gasping as he vows to complete 100 knuckle push-ups before leaving. Doubt creeps in as fatigue overwhelms him. Memories surface of running away from home to follow his stepfather's path. Laughter once masked his insecurity. Admiration for Katsumi Orochi drove him to knock on the Shinshinkai school's door, chasing borrowed pride. From the audience seats, he prayed for his master's victory while watching elite fighters dominate the underground arena. The roaring crowd shook him, revealing how small and distant his own strength truly was. In the underground arena, Master Katsumi was crushed by Retsu's overwhelming Chinese kenpo, leaving the crowd in chaos. Watching from afar, the trainee trembled, shaken by the realization that a single blow decided everything. Retsu's words echoed in his mind, describing a strength rooted in ancient tradition beyond modern karate. The image of Retsu standing firm before the fallen master ignited a deep fascination with Chinese culture and its discipline. That defeat did not discourage him. Instead, it planted a new resolve to seek power from the same source. Outside the Shinshinkai headquarters, he kneels, believing Master Katsumi must have once felt the same frustration after defeat. He walks away with a bag over his shoulder, convinced Master Retsu would never agree to train him, yet unable to abandon the thought. Doubt grows as he considers quitting his job to devote himself fully to martial arts. Suddenly, a splash erupts in the canal nearby as someone moves across the water with unnatural speed. Turning toward the disturbance, he stares in disbelief, sensing the presence of extraordinary strength. Water explodes upward as Master Retsu dashes across the canal, carrying an injured person in his arms. Seeing this, the trainee runs after him, convinced this is his chance to prove himself by helping. Without noticing the traffic ahead, he rushes into the street, focused only on catching up. A sudden impact ends everything in an instant. When he opens his eyes again, he stands in an unfamiliar medieval city, realizing he has been thrown into another world. The young man stares as the broad-backed fighter walks away, sensing something strangely familiar in his presence. He reaches out to check on him, unsure whether the man is injured or simply lost in thought. In an instant, killing intent floods the air, and the fighter's expression twists into raw aggression. A single punch launches the young man backward, before he can react. As blood spills from his mouth, realization strikes him that the man before him is none other than Master Retsu Kaioh. Blood streams from his face as he accepts the blow, believing fate arranged this encounter and refusing to step back despite the pain. Gathering his resolve, he declares his identity as a Shinshinkai student, standing firm before Retsu with unwavering determination. In a foreign town, he struggles to accept that he has been reincarnated into another world, far from everything he once knew. Inside a tavern, explanations follow, describing people like them as lost ones transported across worlds rather than reborn. Retsu listens calmly while holding a mug, acknowledging that they were sent here by forces beyond understanding. The idea unsettles him, sounding unreal and detached from the discipline he trusts. Despite remaining composed, he questions whether returning home is even possible. The young man realizes they cannot return home because their former lives have already ended, leaving him stunned. Across the tavern, Retsu remains composed, absorbing the implication that he too must have died. Confidence fills his gaze, certain that defeat could never truly claim him in battle. Confusion grips the student, as he struggles to understand how such a warrior could fall. Shock causes him to jerk backward, spilling his drink as the truth becomes impossible to ignore. A massive lizardman suddenly looms inside the tavern, its scaled body coiling near the ceiling beams. The young man freezes as a reptilian eye fixes on him, realizing such creatures truly exist in this world. patrons and staff stare in alarm while the creature settles heavily onto the counter. With sharp teeth exposed, it calmly requests its usual order, forcing the innkeeper to comply. Moments later, trembling hands push out a covered dish, treating the monster like an ordinary customer. The innkeeper presents a chained creature as the lizardman's order, placing it heavily on the floor. Shock spreads across the table as its features become clear, far beyond an ordinary animal. The elf identifies it as a cockatrice, a lethal beast with a gaze that kills instantly. Its eye opens, releasing a deadly glare that drops a nearby warrior without warning. Before panic can spread, the lizardman crushes the creature's head, ending the threat at once. Black blood sprays across the tavern as the crushed cockatrice's body bursts, splattering nearby patrons. Dark liquid lands on the elf's skin, burning instantly as she realizes it is venom. Pain spreads rapidly through those exposed, the poison acting faster than anyone can react. Amid the chaos, the lizardman calmly devours the creature, unaffected by its deadly properties. Retsu watches closely, analyzing the scene in silence, while others struggle to comprehend such resilience. Then Retsu studies the lizardman closely, noting the strange flavor of the cockatrice, and measuring the creature's composure. Sharp claws and thick fangs reveal natural weapons built for tearing flesh. Layered scales form heavy armor, while dense muscles shift beneath its hide. Seated calmly, Retsu acknowledges the monster's strength, aware that he stands at full condition. As the lizardman lowers into a fighting stance, Retsu tightens his fist, preparing to counter whatever attack comes next. The lizardman studies Retsu and senses that any clash between them would become a fight to the death. Retsu calmly meets his gaze, acknowledging the tension without shifting from his seat. Both rise to face each other as the young man steps between them, trying to stop the confrontation. Power gathers in the room, warping the air as neither warrior retreats. Instead of hostility, excitement spreads across Retsu's face, welcoming the challenge this new world offers. Retsu steps toward the lizardman with steady composure, while the young man watches in confusion, unsure why the tension has shifted. A faint smile appears as Retsu explains that the creature reminds him of his homeland, easing the hostility in the room. He calmly describes how crocodiles have long been eaten in his country, treating such beasts as ordinary food. The lizardman listens as Retsu notes that their great size often makes them difficult for restaurants to handle. He recalls incidents of crocodiles escaping into the streets, turning danger into something familiar rather than frightening. Retsu recalls how crocodiles sometimes wander into restaurants back home, viewing the lizardmen as something similarly ordinary rather than monstrous. The young man panics, insisting the creature is not a simple animal, while the surrounding patrons recoil in fear. Silence falls as Retsu clenches his fist, his intent sharpening despite the warnings. Standing face to face with the lizardman, he accepts the challenge openly, ready to fight as the young man desperately tries to prevent the clash. Someone recalled the death roll. Once a crocodile bit down, it spun with deadly force. The memory was vivid. The technique didn't let go until the victim stopped moving. The death roll twisted limbs until joints snapped. The body was slammed against the ground without pause. It was brutal, unforgiving. Anyone caught by it faced a violent, crushing end. The memory of the death roll lingered. All it took was one bite. Retsu studied the lizard warrior carefully. What mattered now was avoiding that powerful jaw at all costs. Retsu examined his opponent closely, planning his approach. He calculated every move with care. Behind him, a voice cried out, reminding him that the lizard warrior wasn't a crocodile. Without warning, the lizard warrior struck hard. The man who warned Retsu was sent flying. His body hit the ground with force. The lizard simply growled to move aside. The lizard warrior stood tall, his tail coiling behind him. It wasn't just for balance, it was a weapon. Thick, powerful, and fast enough to break bone if needed. The tail struck with precision, acting like an extra limb. Fast and forceful, it overwhelmed opponents. His loose clothing added danger, hiding his movement and masking where the next hit began. The lizard warrior bared his fangs. Retsu stayed calm, reading his opponent. Around them, tension spiked. No one could intervene now. The fight had begun. It was theirs alone. Just as the clash was about to erupt, a sudden movement interrupted them. An old man stepped in calmly. Retsu and the lizard warrior froze, caught completely off guard. The old man ordered his drink like nothing had happened. No one noticed him enter. Retsu was stunned. His presence had gone completely undetected. Even the lizard warrior backed down. Retsu was stunned. The old man had approached without a sound. No one saw him come in. The bartender froze. Everyone wondered who this man really was. The old man chatted peacefully, recalling a calm day by the river. He laughed at his own defeat in fishing. Still, he smiled and asked for a drink anyway. The lizard warrior towered behind him, claw raised. His voice echoed across the room. But the old man didn't flinch. He simply smiled, calm and untouched by the threat. Before the claw reached him, the old man's fishing rod flicked upward. The tip struck the lizard's chin. Its head snapped back, stunned. Silence fell as everyone stared, confused. The old man's strike lifted the lizardman clean off the floor. He spun midair, roaring in pain. With a bright grin, the elder raised his rod and joked casually. The rod snapped as the old man hurled the lizardman through the air. Everyone froze in disbelief. Even Master Retsu widened his eyes, watching the rod's tip shatter mid-spin. A deafening boom echoed as the lizardman's body slammed into the ground. Dust and fragments exploded outward. The crowd covered their ears, stunned by the sheer force of the impact. The old man's strike landed clean. The fishing rod wrapped tight, dragging the lizardman hard. His tail slammed down instinctively, but the floor cracked beneath him from the violent pull. Retsu stood calmly as the fishing line snapped without warning. The massive lizard growled beside him. It sensed something strange. Retsu's chest tightened. His instinct warned him before the beast moved. The lizard lunged toward the wall, crashing through the stone. Retsu remained still. The old man chuckled as bystanders stared. He gripped the tail calmly and asked what Retsu would do. Retsu's body reacted before his mind did. His fists rose, his feet adjusted. Everyone stepped back as silence filled the air. He stood in stance, alert to every movement ahead. Retsu watched the rod blur through the air. The speed was unreal. Even soft objects could destroy flesh. A strike like that could end a fight in one blow. The rod struck with force no armor could withstand. Scales split open like paper. Flesh tore. Bones cracked. The weapon never stopped. Its path carved straight through everything in front. Retsu's eyes locked on the old man. That mark on his chest was no decoration. His body reacted without thought. Something deep inside recognized the force hidden beneath his smile. Smoke circled the beast's form. The old man stood unmoved, bamboo rod raised. The dragon roared with force. Its eyes locked on him as the air between them trembled hard. Long ago across the sea an island was ruled by dragons. 10,000 of them flew above its peaks. One man arrived alone, carrying nothing but a simple fishing rod. He was called Gridor Istan. With only a rod in hand, he destroyed every red dragon on the island in one day. That crest on his chest marked him forever. The boy asked if he was Gridor. The old man smiled. He called it a tale, said he chased off a few. Others turned it into legend. Gridor sipped calmly, calling himself a simple old man. Retsu watched closely. His thoughts split between what stood before him and what once stood alone against a mountain of dragons. The image returned in Retsu's mind. It was not a vision. That beast existed. If dragons were real here, then so was the strength needed to defeat them. Retsu stepped forward, calm and precise. He gave his name with respect and bowed in silence. The old man raised his eyes. The air between them grew sharper without words. Without warning, Retsu launched forward. His leg tore through the air and struck Gridor cleanly. The impact shattered the stool. Bottles fell. The silence broke into sudden movement and force. Smoke curled through the shattered room. People backed away. Retsu stepped from the haze, his voice steady. He lowered his stance and spoke clearly. He wanted a true fight with Gridor. Retsu stood firm in the haze. Onlookers froze. He called for a fight, but before any answer came, Gridor vanished. The floor split. Only smoke and broken wood remained behind. The bar fell silent. Retsu's eyes gleamed with excitement. The man who slayed dragons had vanished. Retsu grinned wide. To face someone like that made his blood feel alive. Retsu walked through the market with calm confidence. The boy followed closely. Retsu admired his new robe, flexing gently. He tested the stitching, inspecting every seam before slowly forming a fist. The merchant used magic to complete the sale. The boy read the cost aloud, 800 copper coins. Retsu gave no reply. He observed, arms crossed, eyes fixed on nothing. The boy asked what to buy next. Retsu stayed silent. His thoughts drifted. He remembered the dragon slayer. He remembered the crocodile man. Both names now lived in his memory. Retsu looked across the city. This world was dangerous. His eyes shifted to nearby weapons. He reminded the group that survival here would require preparation and the ability to fight. They discussed going to the guild district. The boy explained how people pay in this world. Retsu asked quietly. The answer came quickly. Magic smartphones handled money and information both. The screen displayed a map. The boy pointed at the capital, Prakirika. The royal city of Kushiel stood nearby. Retsu studied every detail, taking in the names and locations silently. They reviewed the city map. Kushil was large. Retsu listened as Nakamura explained the districts. Weapons could be found in the guild area. Retsu considered traveling by carriage to save time. Retsu gave thanks to Nakamura for his help. The boy smiled, grateful too. At a shop, the cook praised Retsu. The tavern incident was over without further trouble or damage. Outside, Nakamura noticed his magic phone was missing. Retsu turned sharply, alert. A man with a hood held the device near a wall. The boy pointed quietly. Retsu's eyes narrowed. The thief pressed his hand into the wall and phased through it. Nakamura shouted. Retsu watched without blinking. The man had used magic. The phone was now behind stone. Nakamura panicked and moved to run around. Retsu stepped forward. He didn't wait. His palm struck the wall, cracking it open. He chose the direct path without a second thought. The crowd stared in silence. Retsu passed through the hole. Nakamura stood amazed. The thief had used magic to vanish. Retsu had used strength to follow. Both methods worked fast. Retsu followed the thief into a narrow alley. He found him kneeling before a robed figure. The woman turned slowly. Retsu watched without speaking, his expression cold and alert. The woman praised the thief. He smiled, thinking his work was done. She confirmed he had chosen the right target. The thief asked for safety. She answered with a calm nod. With one gesture, she raised her hand to the wall. Magic flared. The thief's body began to vanish. She promised paradise. Her voice stayed quiet. Her power was absolute. The thief's body burned. He screamed in gratitude as the fire consumed him. His eyes stayed wide. The woman watched without flinching. Magic fire left nothing but silence behind. She stood calmly near the fading flames. Retsu arrived, eyes steady. The fire crackled in the distance. He observed everything. She smiled, pleased with what she had done. Retsu said one word, flames. The woman spoke again. She praised the beauty of ending life. She turned to Retsu, asking softly if he too found death to be graceful. Nakamura ran through the opening, calling to Retsu. The woman stood calmly near the scorched ground. At her feet lay the stolen magic phone, untouched by the fire surrounding it. She raised the phone with a smirk. Retsu's voice deepened. He accused her directly. She did not deny it. Her goal had always been to bring him to that place. Nakamura asked if she was Retsu's acquaintance. Before anyone could answer, a sharp object shattered in his hands. Something had changed. The atmosphere shifted again. No one moved yet. The woman watched as the device crumbled. She calmly stated its end. Nakamura stared in shock. His Magiphone had been lost. Retsu stepped forward, asking for her true name. She finally introduced herself. Her name was Amakusa Tokisada. Nakamura reacted first, eyes wide. The name carried meaning. Retsu listened closely, his posture still, waiting to understand who she truly was. The boy recalled the history. Amakusa Shiru, from the Edo period, known for rebellion, executed long ago. He questioned how someone like her could now stand here, alive and unshaken. Flames burst from the wall. Retsu inhaled deeply. His cheeks expanded with air. Everyone froze. The fire reached for him, yet he stood still, preparing his answer with calm precision. Without hesitation, Retsu blew with great force. A powerful gust tore through the flame. His posture never shifted. The pressure in his breath countered the blast without touching the ground. His body rose with the force of his own breath. Fire scattered. The crowd stared. Retsu, without magic or weapons, soared upward, climbing the air like a wave of wind. Retsu landed without injury. Amakusa stepped back, surprised. Her flames had been stopped. Even demons couldn't withstand them. She called it a good effort but saw something unusual in him. She called Retsu a struggler. He repeated the word quietly. Her tone was calm. He had defied her magic. That was enough to place him in a special category. She spoke of loss and death. The image of a man appeared scarred, kneeling, defeated. He had died chasing victory. Retsu's eyes narrowed. The meaning behind her words was clear. Retsu spoke with clarity. His presence in this world was the result of his will to fight. Amakusa responded, claiming she too was one of those burdened by struggle. Retsu demanded her name. She studied him silently, then admitted she had no idea who he was. Retsu narrowed his eyes. His name meant nothing to her. Amakusa answered with a smirk. She expected him to be unknown. Nakamura watched in silence. A strange tension grew. Respect, disbelief, and curiosity now filled the air between them. Retsu moved in a flash. His fist struck Amakusa's face with full force. She flew back, stunned. Blood flew from her mouth. The street fell silent in an instant. Amakusa struggled to breathe, her face twisted in pain. Retsu stood firm, unshaken, his voice cut through the tension. She would have to pay for everything she destroyed without hesitation. Amakusa gritted her teeth. Her hand moved behind her back. Retsu stepped forward, fist raised. Just before contact, her body vanished. A flash of light replaced her presence. Retsu halted his strike. He scanned the space around him. Nakamura shouted his name. His voice trembled. Retsu turned quickly. A whisper followed. The threat had changed position. From above, Amakusa unleashed a spell. Fire poured downward. She called it Pyroblast. A massive burst of heat fell fast toward Retsu. The ground below began to break. The flames rushed toward Retsu, but he rolled and repositioned. The blast scraped the ground behind him. Amakusa adjusted her stance, trying to keep the pressure on his movements. Retsu leapt into the air, spinning with force. His kick struck down from above. Amakusa flew into a wall. Smoke rose. Onlookers watched, unsure of who now held advantage. Amakusa stood, holding her arm. Her wrist was damaged. She admitted the block. Retsu stepped forward slowly. He muttered about the fire. Not real. It was only an illusion. Retsu stood amid the broken wall, unfazed. Smoke drifted behind him. Amakusa smiled calmly and lifted her hand. Magic lit her fingers as she displayed another strange trick for him. She explained it clearly. These skills were not earned, they were granted. Retsu asked if all fighters were like this. She confirmed they were given power by something beyond this world. Amakusa continued. Each struggler entered this world through loss. All carried failure from another life. Yet each was given a gift to try again. Even their defeat had earned them entry. Strugglers were destined to meet and clash. Only one could remain with power. Retsu doubted the meaning behind those words, but Amakusa's calm gaze silenced both him and Nakamura. Amakusa raised her arms as radiant energy formed. She spoke of resurrection and rewriting destiny. Nakamura listened closely while Retsu watched, unsure whether she was dangerous or truly enlightened. Nakamura stood quietly as Retsu narrowed his eyes. Amakusa smiled, suggesting they all had someone they wanted to face. Her words pierced through the still air, aimed directly at Retsu's past. Amakusa's calm voice challenged them. A vision of another warrior burned into Retsu's mind. Nakamura gasped as tension rose. Retsu's clenched fists showed he remembered something deeper than her invitation. Retsu rejected her promise with rage. Monsters and dragons were myths to him. Nakamura tried to speak but hesitated. Amakusa remained still, unmoved by doubt, declaring she had no need. Amakusa's calm faded as Retsu's voice thundered. He wasn't chasing illusions. He had a dream once. When she questioned his faith, his silence trembled. Nakamura watched, unsure of what came next. Retsu remembered China's long history. Centuries of discipline filled his thoughts. A dream from his homeland echoed in his voice. His journey here was no accident. This world had meaning. Because of everything he had seen, he now understood. He would prove it through combat. Every warrior and challenger would fall. Martial arts from his world would rise above all. Nakamura stood speechless. Retsu's voice thundered. His path was clear. He declared that reincarnation itself existed for this goal, to prove Chinese martial arts were the strongest in every world. She acknowledged Retsu's strength. With a subtle smile, she turned away. Her message was clear. They were not done. Retsu said nothing, but his eyes watched her closely. Beneath a towering tree, an ancient arena waited. It stood as a place of battles and legacy. Her voice lingered in Retsu's mind. Their next meeting was already decided. Retsu stepped into the arena without hesitation. His presence startled Nakamura and Amakusa near the gate. Nakamura questioned him. Retsu stayed silent. The truth was about to emerge. Nakamura's confusion shifted to fear. Amakusa smiled without explaining. Retsu adjusted his stance. A sharp whistle cut the air. Arrows shot forward with precision, fired to test his reaction. One arrow aimed for Nakamura's face. His eyes widened in panic. Retsu remained calm and focused. This test was not personal. It was a challenge built on discipline. The armored archer aimed down at the arena. Nakamura flinched and dropped to the ground. Retsu raised his hand calmly. Amakusa observed without concern, keeping distance from the confrontation below. Retsu pointed at Amakusa, anger rising. He realized she had orchestrated the ambush. Arrows flew once more. Amakusa stepped back slowly. Nakamura trembled. Retsu prepared himself for incoming strikes. Amakusa gave a farewell and disappeared behind the wall. The soldiers began advancing into the arena. Retsu narrowed his eyes. Nakamura looked up as footsteps approached from all sides. Retsu and Nakamura were surrounded. The commander stepped forward. He did not care about the details. Amakusa had caused enough damage. He wanted to speak directly to the two suspects. The commander explained recent trouble. Strange people had been arriving from another world. Their actions disrupted order. The king was worried. The commander made it clear the situation must change. He called out Retsu and Nakamura. Both were part of the disturbance. His voice was stern. Nakamura recognized the uniform. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the king's guard. Nakamura identified them as the king's guard. They were the strongest force, directly under royal command. Their reputation alone made enemies retreat. Their discipline and strength were unmatched across the land. Each warrior earned rank through raw strength. They could defeat giant scorpions and centipedes unarmed. Armor was forged from monsters they personally killed. Only the victorious advanced to soldier status. They trained to strike with precision. Their weapons were crafted from enemy remains. These elite soldiers stopped countless demon invasions. Their victories protected the kingdom and secured peace for all. Nakamura explained the king's guard had come by royal order. The commander confirmed it. His voice stayed calm. He warned Retsu to stay silent. Arrest was about to begin. The commander leaned in and ordered them to surrender. Retsu did not respond. He struck first with a sudden blow. The force sent the commander flying through the air. The commander hit the ground hard. Blood spilled from his mouth. Nakamura stood shocked. The soldiers froze. No one expected Retsu to retaliate with such power, and without hesitation the commander staggered from the strike. His body lost balance. Confusion spread through the surrounding soldiers. He crashed hard onto the ground. Retsu stood firm. Nakamura watched, speechless and frozen. Retsu glared at the crowd. His voice roared with anger. He shouted that no one had the right to arrest him. The entire arena trembled from his defiance. The guards panicked. One shouted that Retsu had struck the captain. Nakamura looked overwhelmed. He asked why Retsu attacked a royal officer. The situation had become serious and unstable fast. Nakamura stared at the fallen captain. He feared the consequences. Retsu remained still. Suddenly, the captain stood up again. The soldiers could not believe he recovered from such a blow. Despite his injuries, the captain launched another attack. Retsu reacted quickly. With calm precision, he raised his hand and prepared to strike back again without hesitation or delay. The captain charged again. Retsu countered with a strong sweep. The soldiers stared in silence. Above them, an old man watched the clash while calmly holding a long fishing pole. The old man spoke softly. He commented that Retsu had interrupted. Retsu's attack had somehow affected the captain's body. The observers looked on, realizing someone else was controlling the fight. Nakamura recognized the man. He shouted his name. It was Master Iston. The soldiers stepped back. Retsu turned his focus. A new presence had just entered the arena's stage. Nakamura confirmed the man was Iston, the Dragon Slayer. Retsu observed him seriously. He knew Iston's strength. Lifting a giant man with fishing line was no simple feat. Iston downplayed his reputation. He claimed to be a fisherman. The soldiers around him grew tense. Retsu acknowledged his power. Iston mentioned the king's orders and apologized for the situation. Retsu started to speak. Iston interrupted with a question. He reminded Retsu of a recent tavern incident. Retsu stood still. The soldiers recalled the chaos that had followed that day. Iston called it a crime. Retsu and Nakamura stayed quiet. Iston warned them, one way or another they would answer to the king. His expression turned serious and sharp. Far above, the royal castle stood tall. The king waited. A message had been sent. The name Retsu was already known. His presence had stirred something larger in motion. Inside the palace, advisors voiced concern. One warned of a growing threat. Strugglers kept appearing. They feared the country would fall apart if nothing was done to stop them. King Gilga-X of Brakirika smiled. He told Ridley he wanted all strugglers gathered. The chamberlain looked surprised. The king confirmed it was part of his larger plan. Ridley asked for clarification. The king explained the arena was made for them. According to legend, Brakirika grew strong from strugglers. Their power shaped the kingdom's current influence. Using Magifon, Brakirika gained control over valuable knowledge. The king planned to act again. Ridley looked unsure. Gilga-X declared it was time to prepare his next strategic decision. The king described his method. He named creatures like snakes, spiders, and scorpions. All would be placed inside a box to fight. Only one would be allowed to survive. Ridley listened closely. The king explained the surviving creature would gain strength through conflict. That final survivor would hold the greatest power shaped by the struggle inside the sealed box. The king tightened his grip. He called the survivor a bringer of death. This, he said, was the spell of destruction, a forbidden technique known as Gu. The king studied the strugglers. He planned to use them for the Gu ritual. His experiments revealed they held unique traits. Each one could push the limits of survival. He smiled widely. This plan would let him manipulate more than war or politics. His goal was greater. He wanted control over the economy and influence across the entire world. Ridley questioned the king's intent. The king confirmed it. He would make strugglers fight, not just to survive, but to unlock the ancient power known as the Gu spell. Ridley realized the truth. The king's true desire was not power or strategy. He simply wanted to witness a strong fighter rise. That was his ultimate objective all along. The doors opened. Istin entered with Retsu and Nakamura behind him. The king welcomed them calmly. The next phase of his plan had officially begun inside the palace. The king recognized Nakamura. Retsu explained their meeting was unplanned. He apologized for causing trouble. The king smiled and suggested rewarding them with something new from the castle's vault. Nakamura stepped forward and requested time to speak. He placed a device on the table. It was a magiphone. Retsu watched quietly as everyone turned their attention to it. They explained the magiphone's origin. It was based on her smartphone from her previous world. Nakamura had shared its secrets. The king now considered him a special guest. Retsu turned to Nakamura, changing the subject. He asked about Tokugawa. Nakamura was surprised. In the arena, a man stood proudly. Someone called him the strongest man alive. Nakamura insisted that man was different. Retsu agreed but noted the similarity. The king looked on. Istin said Retsu was a tough one. The king confirmed he beat a captain. The king questioned Retsu directly. He asked about Retsu's name and cheat skills. Retsu stood calmly. Nakamura, Istin and Ridley watched closely, waiting for Retsu's answer. The king demanded Retsu's name. Retsu stepped forward. He introduced himself clearly and without hesitation. His voice carried weight. The king was shocked as Retsu threw him down with ease. Retsu shouted that he was not a struggler. The king called him insolent. Retsu raised his hand, his eyes locked. He moved before anyone could react. With precise speed, Retsu delivered a strike. The room shook. Nakamura and the guards watched, stunned. The king lay on the floor. The power difference was clear. Retsu's punch struck clean. Ridley collapsed without a chance to react. The king stared in disbelief. Retsu stepped forward calmly. He said the sword was too slow to matter. Despite the impact, Retsu's clothes were untouched. Nakamura was stunned. The king asked what happened. Retsu had countered instantly. None of them had ever seen speed like his before. The king called him interesting. He moved closer with curiosity. Retsu landed softly in front of him. Tension rose in the room. No one dared to interrupt the moment. Nakamura rushed forward, calling for Retsu. A magical platform lit up beneath him. The king interrupted, saying he wasn't done. The ground below shifted, revealing something ominous and dark. Retsu landed deep underground. The king warned him. No one had ever escaped this place alive. His eyes focused. The real challenge was now beginning with no room for error. The king declared that terrifying monsters lived below. Dozens of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. Retsu stood ready. He knew survival here meant facing what no one else could. The king showed an image of a destroyed village. He explained the damage came from one beast. Even the Orgot Mountains had changed. Nakamura listened in disbelief and shock. The king continued. 150 soldiers had failed. Only after Istin took command were they able to trap the creature. It was now sealed beneath the castle grounds. Retsu stood before the beast. The king named it King Hydra, a 9-headed monster, a disaster-class threat. Nakamura panicked. The king smiled. Retsu faced the massive enemy without hesitation. The King Hydra roared. Its 9 heads moved violently in all directions. The beast's presence filled the cavern. Retsu stood firm, unshaken by its monstrous size or sound. Retsu studied the creature. He questioned whether it was native to this land. Its form was unfamiliar, but he didn't hesitate. He positioned himself for the battle ahead. With power focused in his stance, Retsu declared it was no problem. Energy surged beneath his feet. He was ready to strike. The fight was about to begin. Retsu attacked without hesitation. His strikes landed directly on the Hydra's heads. Each motion was clean and forceful. The impact spread fast. The creature reeled from the overwhelming power. The observers were shocked. One shouted as Retsu targeted the heads. Even Istin had needed a full squad to subdue the beast. No one expected Retsu to fight alone. Retsu's fist landed with precision. Blood burst from one of the heads. Nakamura watched in awe and called out. Retsu stood firm, showing no signs of slowing down. Retsu dashed between the Hydra's heads. His movements were sharp and fluid. Nakamura and the king watched closely. The Hydra lunged, but Retsu stayed ahead of every strike. Nakamura noticed something. The Hydra's fangs were large but possibly vulnerable. Retsu confirmed the idea. He moved with intent, reading the creature's weakness with perfect timing and control. With full force, Retsu struck the hydra's open mouth. His punch landed at the base of the fang. The monster recoiled. Retsu's power overwhelmed its strength with precision. Retsu's blow shattered the hydra's heads. Its flesh tore apart. The monster writhed in pain. Istin observed calmly. Retsu stood unmoved as the beast's body began to collapse around him. The creature's weight crashed to the ground. Its massive form splintered. Retsu dropped with control. Dust rose in waves. His muscles tensed. His expression never changed as silence followed. He stood upright and pulled out his fan. With one glance he assessed the remains. 2 bright lights sparked near him. His next move was already in mind. Retsu launched shining orbs into the air. Each beam tore through the hydra's heads. The monster twisted in pain. His timing and coordination made the entire attack hit perfectly. The hydra's shriek echoed through the cavern. Blood poured from its wounded heads. Retsu stood firm at the center. His attacks had landed. The beast finally showed signs of collapse. Retsu stood still, eyes locked forward. His senses searched for danger in silence. Like a snake, he observed warmth through motion. The monster's presence glowed under his inner focus. He recalled the method of serpents and rodents. They found prey by heat alone. Retsu read his enemy the same way. His fingers pierced its face with precise strength. The beast screamed as his strike landed deep. Retsu's calm eyes narrowed at the result. He had found its flaw. The battlefield trembled as victory tipped into his favor. Nakamura, a young man with long blonde hair, watched closely. Retsu adjusted his fingers. The stance was sharp and deliberate. Eagle Claw style had returned to the battlefield again. He struck with speed and control. Heads fell one by one, severed cleanly by targeted blows. A memory surfaced of the eagle, a predator feared by serpents in nature. Retsu counted what remained. 4 heads writhed and roared. His arms steadied as instinct sharpened. The real fight was not over. He narrowed his gaze and prepared the next attack. Blows landed directly on the creature's eyes. Each head reeled back from the attacks. The goal was clear. Disabling their vision would break their coordination and weaken their offensive power. One by one, the heads lost sight. The creature twisted wildly, unable to aim. Its advantage disappeared. Vision gone, its attacks turned desperate. The momentum of the battle shifted fast. With focus steady, he prepared his next strikes. Each head would fall in sequence. What began as survival had become execution. The plan was now simple. Eliminate every threat remaining. Retsu twisted his stance mid-motion. A sharp strike crushed the monster's head clean. 2 others lunged. Without pause, he locked their jaws and forced their momentum downward into the ground. Retsu swung with full rotation. His leg connected under the rising head. The impact shattered bone. 3 more heads surged, jaws wide. He stayed grounded and braced for retaliation. Nakamura stared in confusion as Istin spoke calmly. He had seen it before. Retsu stood firm, unaware. Beneath the beast's body, the source of King Hydra's strength began rising. Retsu stood in silence as the heads lunged forward. He counted their movement. Each strike returned faster than the last. His eyes narrowed. Something was different about their recovery speed. The heads grew back again. This time they were larger, Istin explained clearly. Nakamura listened in shock. Retsu faced a cycle of rebirth. The beast's strength was increasing without pause. Fangs widened with heavier force. Retsu remained still, watching every motion. The monster's new heads twisted forward. They looked sharper and more hostile than before. Their speed had nearly doubled. The hydra's heads roared as they closed in. Retsu planted his feet firmly. He watched them come. Muscles tensed. No fear showed in his eyes. He welcomed the charge. A drop of sweat rolled down his face. He smiled, wide and certain. Facing this monster awakened something deep. For Retsu, nothing in his life had felt more real. As a child, Retsu visited the amusement park. His hand gripped his father's tightly. The sights amazed him. That was the first time he ever looked up with wonder. He remembered the day he stood at the temple gate. The sky was clear. His heart was firm. He knocked once. The path toward the Kaioh title had begun. Inside the courtyard, rows of students moved in rhythm. Retsu joined them, fists raised. A teacher watched with approval. That was the first time discipline truly shaped his life. The monk's smile stretched wide as he prepared to spar. His fists moved with sharp memory. Long ago his spirit had awakened when challenged by those who pushed him hardest. Now, in this foreign land, Retsu faced a massive beast. Its mouths snapped in unison. He remembered the past. His stance tightened. The feeling was familiar and clear again. He struck hard without hesitation. His body responded exactly as trained. The fight burned through him. Retsu welcomed the pressure. His pulse quickened just like it did long before. Retsu felt energy rise in his body. Every part responded sharply. Scars from past battles marked his limbs. Still, he stood firm, ready to strike again with full strength. The beasts' heads rushed forward. Retsu's strikes broke through scale and bone. He moved without hesitation. His power was steady. Nothing interrupted the rhythm. The ground shook beneath him. Attacks came fast. He blocked one, dodged another. His mind stayed alert. He pushed harder, refusing to fall. Each move had purpose. He couldn't relax, not even for a second. Retsu moved between heads without delay. He struck the body, not the faces. His fists followed a pattern. With every hit, he shouted louder. He had found the core. The force traveled through the beast's center. Hydra roared in pain. Limbs shook wildly. Retsu stood calm and focused. The end of the fight was near. He tightened his stance. With one final breath, Retsu struck downward. The ground cracked. Hydra's body fell. At last his strength reached its peak in this new world. He raised his hand once more. Retsu stood tall in silence. His hands folded with respect, muscles firm, eyes steady. Victory was his. In this world he had returned stronger, more certain than ever before. He watched the creature fade. A breeze passed. The world seemed new again. He smiled, sensing the endless challenges that still waited. This place was far from ordinary or safe. Retsu laughed lightly and stepped forward. The land felt wild and promising. He saw it clearly now. This world was unpredictable. For him, that meant one thing: excitement. The mountain trembled beneath the castle. Soldiers panicked. A massive crater opened at its base. Nakamura stood still, unable to look away. The land had been torn wide open. Below the rocks, the Hydra's body lay broken. Retsu's voice echoed through the dust. Iston watched calmly. The path forward led under the cliffs where rivers ran beneath the stone. Water roared into a deep ravine. The king spoke with caution. One wrong step meant death. Nakamura's eyes widened. Ahead of them was a decision they could not avoid. Nakamura stared at the rock. His name was carved into it beside a farewell. Retsu had left a message. The cave behind it was quiet. No one else remained. The king approached, calm but direct. The stream ahead flowed into the city's core. Nakamura remained still. He whispered Retsu's name. His hand gripped the wall beside him. Nakamura noticed the writing was wrong. His name was misspelled. But the meaning felt true. His eyes lifted. Companion. The words struck deeper than the farewell. He quietly followed forward. Iston studied the rushing water. The stream's pressure was intense. No normal person could survive going against it. The king doubted anyone could climb that route. Nakamura said nothing. The cave narrowed. The king listened as Iston explained the dangers. No air, steep drop, and strong currents. Nakamura sat quietly, thinking only of where Retsu might be now. Retsu surged through the water. His body moved with purpose. Arms cut forward, eyes fixed ahead. No hesitation remained. Against the current, he advanced upstream without looking back once. Retsu swam against the current, mind sharp. The sky dragon vanished into the horizon. He knew his goal. The real answers were not behind him. They waited far upstream. The water pressed harder. His lungs tightened. The tunnel grew darker. Retsu pushed on, knowing he might not survive. He accepted the danger. This path was his to finish. Bubbles broke the surface. Then silence. At last, Retsu emerged in calm water. His breath returned slowly. A new land opened before him. The next chapter had begun. Retsu burst from the water's surface. The cliffs rose around him, sharp and untouched. He exhaled deeply. This strange land spread wide. The journey ahead had only just begun. His smile grew as he looked ahead. Below, the world opened like a map. Victory filled his chest. Each challenge behind him had led to this quiet moment of clarity. A dragon soared nearby. Retsu tracked its path with sharp eyes. His hand shaded the glare. He whispered to himself. That was the next step. He began moving forward. The creature burst from the sand, tearing a dragon from the sky. Its jaws crushed bone with ease. Retsu watched from the ridge, measuring the beast without blinking. Dust cleared as the insect vanished below. Retsu studied its trail. He knew danger had no end here. Creatures capable of hunting dragons would not hesitate to chase him next. Retsu stepped forward across the field. His voice quiet, he spoke to Nakamura. There was still more ahead. Beyond the horizon, new battles waited. He walked toward them without pause. The goblins emerged from the dark hills, their twisted faces smeared with grime. They moved fast. Their numbers overwhelmed every border patrol they encountered. Under the night sky, goblins surrounded the forest trail. Warriors drew blades. The captain signaled retreat. Speed was their only chance for survival tonight. Encircled with no clear escape, Lord Lorik stood his ground. Bakirika was near, but goblins blocked the path. The battle had already begun. Karen refused to leave. She stepped beside Lorik with her blade raised. Behind them, goblins crept closer. Ahead, something heavier moved. The ground trembled under the weight of another threat. A massive boar appeared from the shadows. Its tusks scraped the trees. Lorik and Karen froze. Trapped between the goblins and the beast, their choices grew fewer with each second. The goblins pushed from behind. The boar blocked the path ahead. Karen gritted her teeth. Lorik tightened his grip. Surrounded on both sides, they prepared for the final clash. Karen and Lorik froze as a massive boar stepped aside. Behind it stood a big black-haired man. Lorik muttered in shock. Karen stared wide-eyed. Retsu had just arrived. Retsu calmly looked at the goblins and said, "Hey." Confused, one goblin leaned in. Another shouted, "Did you just say we stink?" Their anger boiled. Tension filled the forest air. Without warning, the boar swung its tusks. Goblins flew helplessly into the trees. The ground cracked. Retsu did not move. Karen and Lorik watched silently as the tide had turned. Retsu crushed trees with the giant boar's swing. Goblins flew through the air. He frowned as he looked at the clearing. That exact spot was where he planned to sleep. His camp was gone. Retsu sighed. Smoke and goblin stench filled the forest. He covered his nose and spoke clearly. They could eat, but only if they moved far away. The goblins grew furious. One repeated his words loudly. Retsu responded with force. He shouted, struck fast, and sent them flying. Karen and Lorik watched the scene unfold in silence. The goblins shouted in anger. Retsu stood calm as they declared revenge. Their numbers grew, yet even after his last attack they still charged without fear or hesitation. Retsu watched the goblins regroup. Their strength was lacking, but their will impressed him. He smiled. This world, despite the stench and ugliness, promised something he could fight seriously. Stomach growling, Retsu realized he had ignored the horrible smell. He turned to Lorik and Karen. With a wave of his hand, he calmly called them to step forward. Retsu raised his hand and stepped forward. He told the others to stand back. With a focused stance, he faced the goblins alone. A proper fight was finally beginning. Trapped in a labyrinth, the party panicked. No spells worked. Healing magic failed. An enormous figure approached from the shadows. Heavy steps echoed through the corridor. No one spoke. Retsu emerged from the darkness. The party froze. One adventurer called out, surprised. Another shouted a warning. But Retsu continued walking calmly toward the sealed door without changing direction. They tried to stop him. He ignored their words. The ground shook. Retsu walked through the stone passageway. Something dangerous was waiting deeper inside. He didn't hesitate at all. The Cyclops roared and stepped forward. Its voice echoed through the chamber. Retsu stood firm. The giant's presence meant nothing to him. He raised his fists and waited calmly. The Cyclops screamed and charged. Retsu did not move. As it swung, he sidestepped and struck fast. The giant flinched. Retsu's strength surprised it. One hit changed the pace. The air shifted. Retsu's next punch launched forward. The Cyclops widened its eye. The attack was fast. Before it could react, the strike landed clean and full of force. Retsu struck the Cyclops directly in the eye. The giant screamed and staggered. He called out the weakness clearly. The force of the attack shook the ground beneath them. The Cyclops tried to recover. Retsu stayed close and took control. He noted how strange these monsters were. Their size and balance were different. He prepared his next move. Grabbing the Cyclops, Retsu spun quickly. His technique overwhelmed the giant. With a final twist, bones cracked. The spinning lotus move was complete. The fight reached its decisive moment. Retsu stood calmly, holding the defeated Cyclops. The fight was over. With one final motion, he slammed the monster down. Shock spread through the crowd. No one said a word. The dust settled. The adventurers looked around. Retsu had vanished. Only a treasure chest remained where the monster once stood. They stared silently, unsure if he had ever been real. Days later, his story spread across taverns. No one knew where he went. Only the chest remained, marked with a message. It could be opened only by Retsu himself. Retsu told the others to stand back. He faced the goblins alone. Karen questioned his confidence. Lorik watched in silence. The goblins gathered quickly, ready to attack in numbers. Though small, the goblins carried weapons and moved like hunters. Retsu charged first. He focused on their tools. Even blunt weapons could kill. But his fists struck with greater force. With one powerful hit, Retsu crushed the lead goblin. The others hesitated. Karen and Lorik stared, speechless. For the first time, the goblins began to feel unsure. Retsu blocked the goblin blade without flinching. He warned them to care for their weapons. The attack failed. His muscles held firm. The goblin hesitated, stunned by his strength. Retsu crouched, preparing his next move. The goblins saw his stance and charged again. Fearless, they pushed forward. Even after injuries, their will to fight showed no sign of stopping. The goblins came like a wave. Their weapons swung from every side. Retsu held steady. The true fight had only begun. He tightened his fists and moved to counter. Retsu struck the goblins with force. Bodies flew across the battlefield. Karen shouted in disbelief. Retsu declared both strength and strategy were lacking. His movements overwhelmed everything in sight. Goblins regrouped, bruised but determined. They kept advancing. Retsu stood ready. One after another came forward. No matter how many he struck, more appeared without hesitation or fear of injury. Another wave charged. Retsu moved again. His body rotated in midair. With a wide swing, he cleared the path. Dozens fell. The fight pressed on without slowing down. Retsu observed the goblins calmly. He estimated their size and weight with precision. His tone remained steady. The goblins stared in confusion, unsure if they were being mocked or studied. He confirmed their weight and height aloud. A goblin flinched at his calm assessment. Retsu smiled, confident. He raised his arm, preparing for a clean and measured attack. Retsu spun into motion. His technique was fast and sharp. Each strike hit with full control. He continued moving, focused only on the impact. The goblins had no chance. Retsu's attack continued without pause. The goblins collapsed one by one. A final swing cleared the path. He stood still, watching. The forest returned to silence, broken only by breath. Elsewhere, a man stared at the screen in disbelief. His voice trembled. The strength he saw looked unreal. But Retsu's expression was calm. For him, the true fight was beginning. In the exhibition hall, tension filled the air. A match was about to begin. Retsu stood ready. His name echoed beside another. The world would soon witness everything unfold. Retsu measured Baki's size. He recalled how easily the young fighter had been lifted. The power behind the movement spoke of someone beyond human. A serious test was coming. Yujiro's strength struck hard. Retsu flew through the air. He admitted the impact surprised him. Facing the ogre was no simple task. But his focus did not break. Retsu stood tall and declared his martial path. Chinese techniques would not fall short. With his nunchaku ready, he prepared to prove the strength of everything he had trained. Retsu shouted as he unleashed his technique. Goblins spun in the air like weapons. His voice echoed across the field. Every movement was deliberate. None of them could stop it. He caught the goblin mid-spin. Another burst followed. His voice rose again. The goblins screamed. One of them reached out. His hands gripped fast. Retsu did not flinch at all. The goblin spun like chain nunchaku. Retsu stayed firm. He called it an experiment. The crowd stared in silence. The goblin nunchaku technique had just been born in that moment. The goblins roared and rushed in. Retsu responded instantly with a powerful swing. He yelled sharply, spinning a goblin through the air, scattering the others with overwhelming force. Lorik watched in disbelief. He realized Retsu was using one goblin's body as a weapon. The image stunned him. The motion was clean. The result was clear and brutal. Retsu stood silently over the broken body. Cracking sounds echoed. The goblin could barely breathe. Retsu glanced down and said calmly, "A little fragile, aren't you?" His tone never changed. Retsu caught a goblin mid-charge. Another leapt forward, weapon raised. Retsu turned calmly and struck first. His speed overpowered their strength. He spoke plainly. One goblin alone was not enough. With controlled motion, he slammed the goblin into another. The impact cracked loudly. Retsu didn't stop. He grabbed the next one and said clearly that even two would not be enough. More goblins charged from every side. Retsu lifted another body. He said there were plenty more to use. He spun again, knocking them down, unshaken by their numbers. Karen watched with disbelief. She whispered that it was incredible. Lorik remained silent. Retsu picked up goblins one by one. His grip was precise. His motion never slowed down. Each goblin was spun and thrown. Retsu treated them like temporary weapons. He showed no pause between attacks. The goblins scattered in fear. His form stayed focused and controlled. Karen gasped again. Goblins screamed as they fell. Lorik stepped back. One goblin's chest shattered from the strike. She whispered the question aloud, "How can such power exist?" Karen stood frozen, heart racing. She watched Retsu move and questioned everything. How could one man's strength feel so divine? Each strike made her feel smaller in his presence. Karen recalled rumors about the so-called strugglers. She hesitated. Another woman spoke firmly. That man could not be one of them. Karen's eyes narrowed. Something about him felt familiar. Karen answered with certainty. She remembered the tales that man was a legend in her family. Under the moonlight, Retsu stood silent, as if proving the story true. The battlefield was silent. Goblins lay scattered. Retsu stood tall beside the boar. Karen's voice echoed. He was the drifter from the old tales, destined to save their world. Retsu turned calmly and smiled. He said they could now eat in peace. Karen and Lorik stood frozen. Behind them, the path cleared. Their journey finally could resume without fear. Retsu appeared during the ambush. Karen and Lorik watched as he crushed the beast alone. The villagers praised him. Retsu refused thanks, saying he was only protecting his camp. He shared the meat with Karen and Lorik. They were grateful but confused. As night fell, Karen asked why he stayed. Retsu sat near the fire, saying nothing, yet Lorik said they must reach the capital. Distant tremors filled the air. Karen questioned Retsu's origin. Lorik believed he was the rumored fighter. Retsu remained silent, eyes on the flames. Karen urged Lorik to leave before they caused trouble. Lorik hesitated, watching Retsu closely. Karen apologized. Retsu did not stop them, but reminded them to eat before their journey. Retsu handed them meat cooked over the fire. Its scent was strong. Karen and Lorik looked unsure. Retsu calmly explained he used forest spices after checking their safety. Karen took a bite first, Lorik followed. Their eyes widened. Retsu encouraged them. They nodded. Karen slowly smiled and accepted more. The meal gave them strength to continue again. Karen whispered that the food was delicious. Retsu admitted he lacked proper supplies, but Lorik agreed it tasted good. Karen began to feel conflicted about leaving him behind. Lorik reminded her that Retsu had only helped them. Karen defended him, rejecting the label of struggler. She introduced herself as a servant and Lorik as heir to Lincoln. Lorik explained their mission to meet King Gilga. Their land was in crisis. He praised Retsu's strength during the goblin attack. Karen remained quiet, watching Retsu with renewed respect. Lorik sat beside Karen and made a request. He asked Retsu to help them. Karen begged with urgency. Retsu remained silent, eyes closed, unmoved by their desperation. Retsu stood up and rejected their plea. He said their world's struggles were not his. His only goal was to challenge the strongest warriors in this unfamiliar land. Karen accepted his refusal. Lorik urged her to leave quickly. Time was running short. Flames burned in the distance. They could not delay. Their journey had to continue forward. As Retsu rested, he dreamed of a figure from his past. The ogre, a being of unmatched power, might now exist somewhere in this new world as well. Karen asked about the ogre. Lorik explained it was once called the strongest living creature. Retsu stayed quiet, his expression tightening. The memory clearly unsettled him more than expected. Karen spoke kindly. Lorik smiled and praised Retsu's strength. Creatures nearby called him boss. They laughed and showed respect. Retsu stayed silent, eyes narrowed, mind fixed on a single enemy. A goblin stepped from the shadows, grinning. He spoke clearly, unlike the others. Lorik drew his sword. Karen gasped. The goblin mocked Retsu, calling him something far beyond human. Lorik and Karen tensed as the goblin raged. Retsu stayed calm. The goblin called him boss, recalling how Retsu destroyed a goblin village. The name ogre filled the cave's air. Retsu listened without speaking. The goblin compared him to the ogre. Who was stronger? The question lingered. Retsu's eyes narrowed, his thoughts suddenly pulled toward a distant memory. The goblin leaned closer. He had seen strength. He had survived the destruction. Now he wanted to witness a clash between monsters. Lorik and Karen stayed alert, watching everything. Another goblin reached for the meat. Lorik shouted in protest. Retsu calmly allowed it. Tension eased. The goblins, once enemies, now sat quietly under the strange rule of strength. The goblins praised Retsu's strength and fairness. He stayed quiet, remembering past moments. He had never faced the ogre. That unfinished battle was the one thing left undone. Images from the past came back. Crowds, arenas, and narrow halls where strength clashed. But never against the one called ogre. That thought stayed buried deep in his chest. As fire crackled, a goblin spoke again. Retsu opened his eyes. The goblin revealed the truth. Somewhere in this world, the ogre still walked. Retsu said nothing, but listened. The goblin took a bite and grinned. Karen and Lorik recoiled in shock. He admitted the meat was human. Tension filled the cave. Retsu remained seated without reacting. Lorik spoke. A planned ambush had failed. A group hired by his family tried to kill the ogre. They surrounded him with numbers. But the outcome had turned brutal. No one survived. The ground was left stained. Only bones and weapons remained. The ogre consumed everything. His power was beyond reason. Retsu now understood the scale of the threat. The goblin asked about Karen and Lorik. They stayed silent. He warned them again. Fighting the ogre was no small task. Many tried. All failed. Retsu remained calm. The goblin grinned, declaring Retsu would win against anyone. Karen watched closely. Lorik stayed guarded. The goblin raised his hand with confidence. He truly believed Retsu could survive the ogre. Without warning, Retsu struck his hand, moved fast and clean. The goblin's words ended mid-thought. Karen gasped. Lorik's eyes widened. The cave fell silent once more around them. Karen and Lorik watched as the goblin screamed. Retsu stood firm. The others cowered. He said nothing at first. Then he calmly voiced his dislike for what had unfolded here. Retsu looked at the goblin. He saw no pride, only fear. He recalled a time before. That same ogre had spoken of devouring. The memory was still sharp. Retsu spoke clearly. He knew the feeling of fighting something that fed on humans. Karen listened in silence. Lorik stared ahead. The ogre of this world was no myth. Retsu compared the ogre to those he never defeated. Names from his past echoed in his mind. Karen confirmed Lorik's name. Retsu finally introduced himself with pride and force. The goblin admitted his view had changed. Retsu no longer refused. He stood before them, hands together, requesting they lead him. The cave fell into respectful, silent agreement. Lorik and Karen were shocked. The goblin cheered. Karen's eyes softened. Retsu now believed it was fate. His goal was clear. He would seek out the ogre directly. The goblin nodded and agreed. Retsu stepped forward with purpose. Karen and Lorik followed behind him. Their journey had resumed. The fight ahead would test them all without delay. The group reached the outskirts of the capital. Villagers cried out in relief. Lorik was recognized. Karen and Retsu scanned the damage. Survivors had gathered inside the great temple. Lorik rushed into the hall. He shouted his return. Faces lit with hope. Whispers spread quickly. The young master had come back. His presence revived confidence among the people. News reached the palace. The lord stood from his chair. A soldier confirmed the boy's return. The old man stepped forward. His eyes were fixed on the temple entrance. Lorik ran to his father. The old man embraced him with relief. News spread quickly. The king had answered their call and was now sending the royal army for aid. Lorik interrupted. He said help was no longer needed. He introduced Retsu, who stood quietly. The name shocked many. Lorik proudly declared he was the drifter spoken of in legend. Some doubted. The ogre's power was feared by all. But the goblin stepped forward and confirmed it. Retsu could defeat the ogre. Karen answered confidently. The room fell quiet. Tension snapped. A sword was drawn. Voices rose in anger. The elder struck Lorik, shouting about the weight of their situation. Karen froze. Retsu watched but did not interfere. The elder pointed to the crowd. People trembled, praying for survival. He blamed their suffering on misplaced hope. Lorik looked down. Retsu stood still. No one dared to interrupt. Retsu finally spoke. He admitted his ignorance of their ways but made one promise. If he defeated the ogre, their problems would end. His words reached everyone in the room. The elder mocked Retsu's vow. He recalled others who made the same promise and vanished. But Retsu showed no anger. His expression stayed calm as he turned and walked out. He called after him. Lorik apologized for his father. Retsu did not mind. He dismissed it all and kept walking. His focus remained locked on what he sensed before. They stepped into the open. The village stretched far across the valley. Retsu observed quietly. He noted its size and weak defenses. The threat to it was too real. Lorik explained the truth. The ogre only attacked when humans entered its territory. But now, for reasons unknown, it had crossed the mountains and directly targeted the Lincoln domain. Guards stood at night watching the fires. They discussed the strange shift in behavior. Something had changed. They couldn't explain why the creature had begun moving toward their lands. Whispers turned to fear. A dark form appeared. One guard froze. Another stepped back. The ogre emerged from the shadows. No warning, no words, just silence before the scream. The guard gasped but could not react. A massive hand grabbed his face. Bones cracked. His legs gave out. The rest watched in silence, frozen by fear and disbelief. The ogre stepped forward, towering over the soldier. His voice was deep and slow. He asked for something, repeating the same question. His eyes locked onto the broken man. A monstrous voice echoed through the night. Retsu halted, eyes narrowing. Lorik stood beside him, tense and alert. Inside the hall, an old lord trembled, clutching his head in despair. The villagers knelt in panic. The lord raised a staff, begging divine aid. His guards tensed. The artifact pulsed beneath the moon. Something unseen approached quickly from beyond the gate. Darkness burst into the courtyard. Soldiers screamed as a beast's face appeared. The knight staggered back, weapon raised. Retsu stepped forward calmly. His eyes locked on the creature's jagged form. The beast grabbed a soldier. His scream echoed as claws sank into flesh. Retsu watched in silence. Lorik froze. The monster's strength overwhelmed the defense. Blood soaked the broken ground. Its grip crushed the man's ribs. Bones cracked and breath vanished. The soldier collapsed. The monster grinned wide. Retsu stepped forward. Lorik shouted, but Retsu's eyes never left the enemy. The creature's chest opened unnaturally. Rotten ribs spread apart. It roared into the night. Its shadow reached the trees. Retsu clenched his fists. The moon glared as the battle began. Lorik called to Retsu, confused by his stillness. Retsu sniffed the air and turned sharply. He sensed blood. His eyes narrowed. The danger had moved toward the lower district alley. Lorik pointed down the path toward the public well. Retsu followed without hesitation. A figure moved below the stairs. They knew the enemy had entered. Their pace quickened without pause. Roy appeared near the stairwell. Lorik shouted his name. Roy turned, confused. A loud cry came from behind. Retsu and Lorik rushed ahead. The shadow had reached first. Trouble waited. Lorik dashed forward but arrived too late. Roy collapsed, wounded across his chest. Retsu saw the damage. His fists tightened. The enemy was still close. Blood soaked the lower steps. Retsu stared down. Torn armor and scattered limbs filled the square. The black figure crouched at the center. Lorik stood frozen. Retsu stepped ahead, knowing what needed to be done. The monster lifted another victim. Its hands moved with violent force. Lorik cried out. Retsu stayed silent, focused only on the creature's body. The killings had to end now. The creature's strength rivaled legends, yet its cruelty shocked even warriors. Retsu roared. Lorik trembled. The beast played with lives. From the stairs, Roy's body lay motionless in silence. Retsu clenched his fists. Lorik stared down, unable to move. The beast paused, gazed still. Above, a new figure readied his weapon. Arrows aimed. Something shifted in the enemy's posture. The monster sat quietly, hands soaked in blood. It did not feed. Lorik watched closely. Retsu noticed its hesitation. The creature searched, ignoring corpses. It wanted something that remained hidden. Lorik tried to join, but Retsu stopped him. Retsu stepped forward alone. His focus tightened. Muscles tensed. He leapt straight into battle, eyes locked on the monster without fear. Retsu launched a strike. The creature roared in return. Both fighters faced each other. The air cracked from tension. Neither backed down. Lorik watched from the ledge, breathing heavily. The monster grinned wide. It welcomed the challenge. Retsu stood tall, unmoved. The night grew colder. Between them lay silence, then stillness, then the promise of a brutal clash. The ogre stood in the center, bodies scattered around him. Lorik watched silently. Villagers whispered in fear. Retsu stepped closer. No one else dared to move or interfere. Lorik doubted, but Retsu showed no fear. A goblin warned his chief. The ogre grinned. Retsu struck first. The ground split from the force. Both fighters stood their ground. Retsu and the ogre clashed. Their power cracked the stone beneath. Locked in a test of strength, neither yielded. Muscles tightened. Sparks danced across the ground. The true fight began. The ogre bared his fangs, eyes locked on Retsu. Lorik watched, stunned by the force. A goblin panicked. Retsu inhaled deeply, then launched forward, striking with all his power. The blow landed clean, shaking the air. Retsu held firm. The ogre growled and countered. Lorik realized both fighters were beyond human. Their strength crushed stone with every movement. Retsu dodged a massive swing. He landed another strike, then pivoted. The ogre swung wide. Their bodies collided again. Speed and power mixed. Retsu's eyes remained sharp, never retreating. Retsu struck the ogre's face. The crowd watched in shock. Lorik froze. The goblin flinched. The impact echoed. Retsu stood firm. The ogre stumbled, but the fight was not over. Lorik questioned if Retsu had won. The elder whispered in disbelief. Retsu stayed focused. For most, 2 strikes would kill. But the ogre remained upright, still burning with strength. The ogre lowered his stance. Retsu prepared again. Lorik gasped. The goblin panicked. Retsu smiled with calm focus. He knew the creature endured, but he had no intention of losing. Retsu charged again, fists ready. The ground cracked beneath his steps. He aimed directly at the head. The ogre reacted too late. The first strike landed with crushing precision. Retsu followed with another punch. The second hit snapped the ogre's head aside. A third came instantly. The monster's body trembled. Retsu did not hesitate. He kept attacking. The fourth strike hit clean. Retsu's knuckles slammed into the jaw. The ogre's balance broke. Pressure surged into the skull. Retsu aimed to shake the creature's brain into defeat. The ogre's hands loosened. Lorik smiled. The goblin sighed. Everyone believed it was over. Retsu watched closely. The silence did not comfort him. The threat was not gone yet. Without warning, the ogre lunged forward. Retsu stood firm. Lorik gasped. The goblin panicked again. Claws stretched toward Retsu's chest. The moment shifted. What seemed over now turned deadly again. The ogre's hand reached around Retsu's body. Lorik shouted. The goblin froze. Retsu's face remained calm. He had seen the move. His next response would decide the outcome. Retsu felt the force again. The power, the speed, the presence. It reminded him of a fight long past. The ogre's wildness brought everything back in an instant. He remembered the same strength, the same pressure, just like Pickle. Retsu clenched his jaw. That experience had never left him. This time, he would fight without hesitation or doubt. Retsu smiled with resolve. He shouted within, Chinese martial arts had lost once. This time, he would prove its strength. He stepped forward with purpose, ready for victory. Retsu tightened his stance. His blade snapped through the air. A sudden strike from the ogre landed. Retsu took the hit calmly, then responded with sharp precision to the face. The ogre grunted and stepped back. Retsu stayed steady. Lorik watched, shocked. The ogre had escaped the last hit. Retsu realized the pattern. If he was like Pickle, this mattered. Retsu lowered his guard on purpose. His arms hung loose. Lorik realized the shift. Retsu smiled slightly. He had remembered the answer. He knew the exact technique needed to finish it. Retsu advanced calmly. The ogre crouched, preparing. The goblin stared in shock. Lorik questioned his stillness. Retsu spoke with clarity. He promised to show the ogre the meaning of hell. Lorik gasped at Retsu's open stance. The ogre charged. Retsu waited without defense. Then with speed his palm struck. A perfect counter landed. The ogre roared as pain surged upward. The ogre screamed. His body launched backward. The roar filled the air. His mouth opened wide. Retsu stood firm. The force of his technique echoed through the entire courtyard. The goblin stared wide-eyed. The ogre writhed below. Lorik questioned if it was magic. Retsu stood still. He recalled Baki Hanma and the reason he trained beyond limits. Retsu had learned a palm strike that affected any creature with bare skin. The same move Baki used. He trained until he understood how to control the human body. The technique came from the ancient school of Kudo. It focused on redirecting force and fluid movement. Retsu learned it at 18. His power came from full control and discipline. Retsu's arms moved with precision. His form flowed like a whip. The ogre tried to block. The strike connected. Retsu's body shifted smoothly with every controlled step forward. The ogre's muscles and skin failed to resist. The palm strike reached through. Retsu recalled Pickle. This time his training would not fail. He declared victory before even landing. Retsu attacked with a rapid combination. Each strike hit clean. The ogre's body shook under the pressure. One final blow landed. The wall cracked. Retsu's technique left a mark. The ogre stepped back. The goblin shouted in disbelief. Blood dripped from deep wounds. Retsu watched in silence. The ogre crouched low. His eyes glowed with something darker than pain. The ogre growled. Spikes snapped from his back. Muscles swelled again. Retsu narrowed his gaze. Lorik watched from above. None had seen this before. Something deep had been awakened. An old goblin recalled stories from years past. He never witnessed such a form. This transformation brought fear. The ogre entered a state of rage unlike anything they remembered. A massive gust tore through the forest. The goblin recalled its name. The ogre's storm gust. Trees snapped. Villages vanished. That was the power no one had ever survived. Retsu stood still. Dust circled around him. The battlefield fell quiet. His eyes held no fear. He had waited for this moment. The challenge had finally reached its peak. He smiled with confidence. This world, once unknown, had given him a real test. His body was ready. His spirit was calm. He would not lose here. Under the full moon the ogre's silhouette loomed. In ancient stories, ogres held legendary power. Retsu recalled myths from his homeland. Now one stood before him for real. He remembered Baki's fight. The Triceratops' stance. The strength shown against Pickle. That memory burned in his mind. Retsu clenched his fist. He would use that form now. Both fighters launched forward. Their strength collided in the air. This new world was strange, but to Retsu, it brought purpose. He had found a worthy opponent at last. The ogre's body changed. Horns grew along his back and limbs. His stance dropped low. Both hands and feet hit the ground. His form resembled a charging Triceratops. Retsu recognized it. The same posture Pickle once used. But this time, it wasn't feint or trick. The ogre was ready to launch a devastating charge with full force. The goblins panicked. They had seen this before. An entire forest was wiped out. If he charged again, neither the town nor Retsu might survive the impact. Retsu realized the danger. The ogre's next attack could destroy the entire area. The stance, the posture, all matched Pickle. One charge would reduce everything around them to rubble. Lorik watched in disbelief. The ogre's body leaned forward. His horns lined up. Power surged through his legs. The monster was ready to strike, using full speed and weight combined. Retsu stood his ground. He clenched his fists. He would not move. He would not yield. He would not allow defeat. This time, he would not give up. The ogre locked on target. His horns pointed forward. Retsu planted his feet. The earth trembled. With full power and no hesitation, the ogre began his final charge forward. Retsu shouted with full force. He called the ogre out. The impact shattered the ground. The shockwave exploded outward. Stones flew. The moment of contact had finally begun. Retsu raised his arms. His body tightened. His voice echoed through the arena. The collision erupted in light and sound. Neither fighter backed away. This was the final clash. Shockwaves rushed across the courtyard. Villagers scrambled for safety. Lorik held his ground. The entire plaza shook under the blast. Dust rose. No one could see who remained standing. Lorik shouted Retsu's name. The goblin panicked. Eyes scanned through the haze. Slowly, Retsu emerged from the smoke. His body stood firm. No signs of collapse. He had endured it. Gasps filled the air. The ogre was down. Cracked stones surrounded him. The goblin trembled. He never imagined the ogre could fall back. Retsu had stopped the charge completely. The beast launched a fast tackle. Retsu remembered a past loss against Pickle. That failure taught him to use momentum. Now he stood prepared, focused on the enemy's path. The ogre's force surged ahead. Retsu sidestepped slightly, redirecting energy with expert control. As the attacker closed in, Retsu steadied his stance, recalling the principle of strength against speed. Planting his feet, Retsu met the charge with precision. Using a single fist, he turned defense into power. His eyes locked forward, ready to face the ogre's full might. Retsu recalled his match against Joe Cruiser. A crushing left hook had taught him precision and discipline. Now, he aimed to use that strength against the monstrous charging enemy. With perfect timing, Retsu rotated his body. His footwork mimicked a boxer's pivot. The ogre charged without slowing, unaware of the trap set through refined movement and practiced rhythm. The left hook struck clean into the ogre's jaw. The beast spun violently across the field. The earth cracked beneath him as he crashed down, stunned and breathless. Retsu stood within the mist, calm and aware. He recalled Quan Chui, a core martial technique, striking both sides. His training merged with the boxer's strength from America. After learning the hook's raw force, Retsu refined his strike. His movements grew tighter and sharper. This beast was strong, but not unlike those he had conquered before. The ogres in his old world never matched this creature's pressure, yet Retsu saw it as a path. Martial arts could still rise in this unknown land. With a powerful shout, Retsu advanced. The ogre roared as he approached. Onlookers were shocked. The strike connected clearly. Smoke rose. The beast entered its 4,001st year. The chamber was wrecked. Lorik stepped forward, still shocked. He stared at the fallen ogre. Around him, soldiers whispered. No one moved. They waited for Retsu's next command. They watched in disbelief. Retsu's fist had broken through. The ogre dropped. The attack traveled fast and clean. It marked the end of the clash. The field fell silent. The soldiers compared the strike to a siege weapon. Only a human hand had stopped it. Lorik remembered the ogre's charge that shattered walls stronger than catapult stone. Everyone saw the destruction. Retsu stood inside the hole left behind. Lorik realized the truth. That man could destroy anything in his path. It was no longer a question. The elder confirmed it. The same move once brought down a giant beast. Retsu had done it again. Everyone turned to him. Silence followed. One word escaped: incredible. Lorik rushed toward the broken ground, calling out. Debris cracked beneath each step. From below, a hand reached up. She moved fast, pulling to help whoever was hanging. The older man gripped her arm tightly. He held on as loose stones crumbled. Lorik gasped. It was her father. They looked at each other. Relief filled them both. The ogre stirred again. One eye opened. His vision locked on Lorik. A faint growl followed. The beast recognized her. Words slipped out. Recognition returned. A new threat had awakened. The ogre recognized Lorik and reached forward. Her father shouted, grabbing his staff tightly. Fear rose. The creature closed in. The man's focus remained on protecting what mattered most. Retsu intercepted the movement. He took the staff calmly. The ogre froze in surprise. The old man smiled. The handoff was complete. Everyone watched, unsure of what would follow. Power surged from the staff. Energy burst outward. Retsu stood firm. The ogre staggered. Shock filled the air, no one understood it yet. But something massive had just begun. The staff's jewel pulsed strangely. Retsu sensed something dangerous. A sharp aura radiated from it. The goblin confirmed it. This object was no simple weapon. It held something darker. The goblin explained its true name. The ogre ruby. Lorik and the others stared at it. A cursed object from long ago. Madness followed any unworthy who held it. Karen recalled an old legend. Her tribe's leader warned of such relics. If this orb matched that tale, Lord Lincoln's strange behavior could be tied to this cursed ruby. The goblin revealed the truth. The ogre ruby formed from a chieftain's last tear. For ogres it held a sacred spirit. For others it spread corruption without warning. The orb was stolen from a sacred tomb. That act enraged the guardian, nearly destroying their village. Retsu realized the ogre's strength came from more than just its form. Retsu questioned the risk. The goblin replied that many would chase it. Greedy rulers, dangerous collectors, or fools hoping it held power. Each had their reasons. None understood the cost. The elder realized the truth. Maybe the Lord had fallen to greed. His intentions, once noble, had brought destruction. The orb's power was never meant to be misused. He confessed aloud. His choice had caused suffering. The ogre had only returned to reclaim what was taken. Regret filled him. The hall stood quiet as understanding spread. Retsu stepped forward. He said nothing. One fluid motion prepared his stance. Everyone turned. Lorik's breath caught. The elder froze. Even the goblin could only watch what came next. Retsu's strikes moved in controlled patterns. The ogre paused, sensing intent. His thoughts shifted. This man was not like the others. His actions carried reason, not blind destruction. Retsu's attack reached full force. He shouted and released it. The crowd shielded themselves. Even Lorik flinched. The ogre braced, unsure what would follow. Silence returned before impact struck. The orb shimmered. The ogre stopped moving. He realized something. All the fighting was not for power. Retsu had struck to honor a legacy. Nothing more, nothing less. Retsu knelt and offered the orb. The ogre stared silently. His hands trembled. He took it slowly. His body stiffened. Something stirred within. The past weighed heavy in his grip. A deep roar shook the hall. Everyone froze. Retsu closed his eyes. The ogre's voice rose, filled with grief. It was not rage. It was the cry of remembrance. A new squad entered the chamber. They were stunned by the destruction. Their leader stepped forward. He scanned the fallen, unsure what had caused such a powerful clash. The elder spoke first. He admitted the truth. The ruby had brought this fate. His mistake unleashed the ogre's wrath. Soldiers looked on as silence filled the large hall. Gripping his sword, the elder stepped down. Rage overcame guilt. He blamed the ogre for the loss. Lorik cried out. Her father stood ready. Another conflict was about to rise. The elder charged with full force. Retsu responded in one motion. The sword met his palm. A sharp snap rang out. Energy surged forward. The strike was perfectly placed. The impact passed cleanly through. The sword cracked and broke apart. The elder fell. His strength vanished. Retsu remained steady. No words were spoken. The fight had ended completely. The elder knelt among the broken pieces. His voice trembled. Regret filled his eyes. Retsu watched silently. No judgment, no anger, just understanding for what had already been lost. Retsu reminded him of duty. Death was easy. Responsibility was harder. The elder listened. Lorik held him. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Peace returned. Words were few. Meaning was deep. Lorik thanked Retsu. Her voice was steady. Around them, order returned. The ogre took the orb and walked away. His path clear. No more rage. Only memory remained. Time passed. The elder became a priest. Lorik stood with the people. Retsu departed. Peace held. But the story of that day stayed carved in every stone and grave. People gathered in town square. Retsu had left without a word. Lorik tried to keep him. No one knew why he vanished, but all spoke of him with pride. Rumors spread. Some called him a wanderer. Others believed he searched for purpose. Mountains lay quiet in the distance. His legacy remained, not through presence but through memory. A statue was raised in the center. Lorik stood below it. Children listened. Locals smiled. Retsu was gone, but his name became a title, the guardian of the Lincoln domain. Retsu climbed the ridge. The air was cold. He remembered the ogre. His thoughts wandered. The world around him was still unfamiliar, but he was not lost in it. He thought back to the duel with Pickle. That fight changed him. Boxing helped restore his balance. He stood stronger now. Every trial gave him something he could carry forward. Looking out, he smiled. The world stretched far beyond. It was filled with challenge and purpose. His path continued. Many foes awaited. and Retsu was ready for all of them. While climbing, Retsu sensed a threat. The wind shifted. He gritted his teeth. A sudden cry echoed above. Something massive approached quickly, cutting through the air without hesitation. A giant bird descended, talons sharp. Retsu leaped away from the cliff wall. Its wings beat powerfully. He landed safely. The creature carried something. He narrowed his eyes to focus. A goblin screamed from above. It dangled helplessly in the bird's grip. Retsu stood still. He watched the shape shrink in the distance. Then his expression slowly changed. Smoke rose beyond the valley. Soldiers froze at the sight. From the shadows came a stampede. The warning was too late. Killer rats charged in from all directions. Screams filled the air. The creatures overwhelmed the front line. One soldier raised his hand, desperate. His voice cracked while begging. The rats clawed and bit without pause. Just as hope faded, stone and rat alike flew apart. A man with pitch-black hair named Retsu stood firm. His eyes narrowed. The real fight had begun. The rats scattered in panic. The boy stared in disbelief. Retsu stood silently. His calm words settled the fear. Grateful, the boy whispered, "Thanks." They walked away from the battlefield. They reached a quiet cabin. The boy cooked while talking. He spoke of monsters and destruction. Retsu listened carefully. When the boy mentioned the rock, Retsu's expression turned sharp and focused. Retsu rose and pointed outside. The boy followed his gaze. High above the forest stood a rock. Atop it lived the ROC, a beast strong enough to lift full-grown prey. Retsu explained the peng bird from his homeland. Its wings could destroy villages. The boy grew excited. He pointed, convinced the rock matched that tail. Retsu's interest deepened as they spoke. The boy revealed his reason. His father vanished. His mother labored alone. He hoped to steal a rock egg for nourishment. Retsu listened quietly as the boy's voice softened. Retsu warned that no eggs meant the bird was still nesting. He respected the boy's reason but questioned his courage. With calm words, he reminded him to act with thought. The boy shouted his promise. He would bring the eggs home. Retsu remained calm. He stood up and decided to investigate the ROC himself, without saying much more. Climbing steadily, Retsu recalled his old world. Birds ruled the skies. Here the beasts were stronger. The scale of life in this land went beyond anything he had imagined. He looked ahead. His interest grew. He wanted to witness these creatures himself. Deep inside, he hoped for a challenge. If possible, he wished to test his strength. Retsu reached the giant nest. He saw the eggs resting undisturbed. The rock was gone. With nothing left to consider, he approached the center without hesitation or second thought. He confirmed the rock was absent. The eggs were untouched. Their size amazed him. He calculated their density. The true rock had to be enormous to produce such eggs. As he observed, someone appeared behind him. A goblin watched from the edge. Retsu turned. Recognition flashed across both their faces. The silence between them broke with one simple phrase. The goblin cried out in joy. He believed Retsu had come for him. Retsu stared silently, confused. His memory offered nothing. Calmly, he admitted he had forgotten completely. The goblin panicked. He begged Retsu to listen. He pointed to the sky. The rock was returning. They had no time. Retsu stayed still. The goblin trembled beside him. Wings tore the air. The rock descended fast. Its eyes locked on the nest. The goblin screamed. Retsu stood between the eggs and the threat without blinking once. The rock landed. Its wings spread wide. The goblin froze. Retsu stared calmly. The beak looked sharp. The talons looked strong. The threat was real and right in front. The goblin shook with fear. Retsu grinned with interest. He called it wonderful. The goblin begged for escape. Retsu did not move. His focus stayed on the enormous creature. Without warning, Retsu tied the goblin. He called him an egg thief. The goblin panicked. Retsu stood tall. He turned and simply said they should go before trouble grew. Retsu launched into the sky with the goblin tied beside him. The goblin screamed in fear. Wind roared around them. Below, the mountains stretched wide and unforgiving beneath their feet. The goblin cried out again. His mind cracked. He thought of death. Retsu stayed focused, descending fast. The rock spotted them both and followed with intense and sudden force. Retsu shouted to the rock. He called out the goblin's crime. As the bird chased them, Retsu welcomed the moment. It would be a true martial test. The auroch dove with speed. Retsu adjusted mid-air. The goblin flailed helplessly. Above the trees, the aerial fight began. In freefall, man and beast raced toward a violent clash. The rock swung its beak. Retsu shifted the goblin out of harm's way. Wind pressure cracked around them. The goblin screamed. The rock's claws moved in with sharp intent. Retsu spun mid-air. His arms locked around the goblin. The rock missed, its wings clipped trees. The goblin blinked, confused. Retsu's motion blurred, the fight had only just started. Retsu studied the rock's motion. Its strikes cut the wind. Each blow shook the air. The bird's strength was immense. Retsu remained focused, measuring the pattern with every move. The rock lunged again. Retsu turned midair. With a powerful spin he redirected force. Timing mattered. The goblin spun past. The rock overreached. Retsu found his opening in the gap. With one strike, Retsu attacked. His heel drove into the rock's face. The bird reeled. Momentum shifted. Retsu remained steady. The aerial battle had now turned in his favor. Retsu's strike landed. The rock cried out. Wings flared as it lost balance. High above the ground, Retsu assessed the risk. One wrong move now could mean sudden defeat. The sky gave no support. Retsu fell with no base to push from. He made a decision. Air filled his lungs. His body expanded to slow the descent. He focused the breath through every muscle. Below, the land rushed closer. The rock recovered. It dove again. Retsu prepared to counter before touching ground or losing control. The rock circled overhead. Its eyes locked onto the moving figures. Retsu remained calm. He knew the bird's strength came not only from its wings but from its precision. Memories of his training surfaced. Retsu recalled lessons about birds of prey. Their vision was powerful. No prey escaped their front sight. But even perfection came with a cost. He found the weakness. The rock's blind spot rested behind its head. A narrow window, a foothold waited there. Retsu smiled with confidence. The opening was clear. The fight would end. Retsu climbed silently onto the rock. Its vision could not reach behind. He secured his position. If this was the blind spot, then it was the chance he waited for. He launched a strong blow. The rock trembled. Its wings faltered. The goblin looked up, concerned. The rock's flight dropped. Retsu shouted to protect the egg. The moment turned. The rock spun out. Air howled. The goblin panicked. They plummeted toward the trees. Retsu focused. The fall began. The Orosik struggled to regain control. The ground approached fast. Retsu assessed the fall. Time was running out. The Orosi remained unresponsive. If they crashed, nothing would survive. He needed a way to trigger action before it was too late. Retsu recalled the nervous system. If the rock's spine still functioned, it could react. He struck fast. The rock twitched. Instinct kicked in. Wings moved. Descent began to shift. Air caught under its feathers. The rock pulled up. Trees bent from the gust. The goblin flew loose. Below, the forest watched as flight barely resumed just in time. The rock skidded across the ground. Dust rose. The goblin celebrated too soon. Retsu stood still. He breathed slowly. Any error in that moment would have ended everything. Retsu reflected. The rock was powerful. The sky had been its domain. One mistake and his head would have been gone. He kept calm, carrying the egg with care. The rock soared off. Retsu watched it leave. He smiled. The fight had tested him. Not just strength, but timing. He called it a good experience, then turned away. Retsu returned with the rock egg. The boy waited with wide eyes. Without speaking, Retsu tapped the shell. He began preparing something special. The others watched in quiet curiosity. He cracked the egg with precision. Flour and milk were added. The bowl filled fast. Retsu stirred it strongly. Steam rose from the fire. The smell filled the air. The dish was complete. A soft dessert sat warm and ready. Retsu called it malai gao. The boy smiled wide. The egg had become something to remember. The boy took the first bite. Everyone followed. Joy spread across their faces. The goblin smiled. He called for his mother. This time, he wanted to share something good. The mother entered and sat. She tasted the dessert. Her expression softened. The boy laughed. She nodded with pride. Retsu watched quietly, pleased by the small but real happiness. Retsu stood at the gate. The boy looked up. Retsu gave him a final task. The dessert now belonged to him. The boy called out, smiling. Retsu walked on. The boy shouted after him. Retsu paused, hearing his name. The boy smiled with pride. He wanted to be more. Retsu listened quietly, then turned with steady steps. Time passed. The dish became famous. People gathered to try it. The boy cooked with heart. The village changed. They called it Retsu Gao. Everyone remembered where it began. Retsu looked west. The road waited. The goblin walked beside him. Questions flew. Retsu smiled. There would be more places, more stories. With no rush, they walked toward the horizon. The goblin pointed at the map. Their next stop was Marone. Retsu listened. The route passed through desert and canyon. They moved toward a mining town known for trouble. The goblin spoke with excitement. He listed food and drink. Retsu stayed silent. His focus remained on the mission. This journey was not for leisure. His path stayed firm. They approached a quiet bridge. Shadows waited at the far end. Retsu slowed his pace. The goblin tensed. Something felt wrong. The road ahead no longer seemed so clear. Retsu stopped at the sight. Figures stood silently on the bridge. Their glowing eyes gave no emotion. The goblin stepped back. Something felt wrong. Retsu's gaze sharpened immediately. The illusion broke. Flesh vanished. Bones stood in armor. Retsu confirmed the truth. These were not men. They were undead. The goblin's voice trembled. The path was not safe. Skeletons covered the bridge. Swords drawn. Shields raised. The goblin whispered what they were. Retsu listened. Their formation was tight. Their presence meant only one thing. A battle was coming. The goblin panicked. Marone had fallen. Undead now guarded the path. Retsu stayed calm. The bridge trembled. The goblin froze in place. Escape was no longer an option. The ground shifted. Retsu focused inward. His feet moved with precision. Balance returned. The goblin watched in disbelief. Retsu moved without force. His control silenced the bridge's motion completely. Retsu entered a stance, his arms aligned, his breath settled. The goblin asked if it was magic. Retsu explained it was form, technique shaped through disciplined movement and breath. Retsu steadied his stance, his hands remained open. This was not a closed-fist technique. It belonged to a different form. He centered his breathing and began to move forward. The skeleton raised its weapon. Retsu struck first. His hand broke through the ribcage. The goblin watched in awe. This was not just defense, it was a form of power. Bones flew through the air. Skeletons fell apart. One remained. Its stance tightened. It prepared to fight. Retsu stood ready. The battle between form and force was not over. Retsu observed the reaction. The skeleton did not feel pain. It moved without hesitation. Understanding its nature changed everything. He adjusted his plan. Their strength came from something unnatural. The goblin called out. Retsu ignored the panic. He grabbed a nearby post. Muscles tightened. He moved with purpose. The undead would not fall from strikes alone. He needed force. With one swing, he shattered bone. The pole tore through them. Retsu advanced, not stopping. He matched regeneration with destruction. His choice of weapon now matched the challenge ahead. Retsu spun the pole in wide arcs. Bone shattered with each strike. The skeletons couldn't close the distance. He kept moving. Pieces flew until silence returned for a moment. A heavy sound followed. Something stepped forward. Retsu turned. One skeleton stood apart. It wore nothing special, yet something about its posture made him pause. Its voice spoke gently. The skeleton stepped closer. It called Retsu by name. Its words echoed with strange clarity. Retsu's grip tightened. Eyes widened. The name it spoke brought shock he did not expect. Retsu stood still. The voice called him Eishu, a name from the past. He narrowed his eyes. The undead knew something. But this moment demanded no hesitation. Without waiting, Retsu launched upward. The goblin shouted. Retsu blocked out the noise. Staff turned in hand. He struck first. The strange skeleton raised its weapon without showing fear. The clash began. Retsu's attack moved clean and fast. The skeleton took the blow. Bones cracked. The goblin watched wide-eyed. Neither man nor monster backed away from the fight. Retsu launched a powerful kick. The skeleton didn't flinch. Its form adjusted. It moved with control. Martial skill ran through its bones. It wasn't just reacting, it was trained. The skeleton spoke clearly. It explained its speed. Without muscle or fat, its body was light. It moved with a speed even Retsu hadn't faced before. The fight changed. Retsu steadied his grip. This enemy wasn't ordinary. It had trained for years. Undeath hadn't dulled its discipline. The skeleton's stance deepened. Both fighters prepared for the next clash. Retsu's pole clashed with sharpened bone. The skeleton moved like a weapon. It had become more than a fighter. Each strike came faster. Its blade form had no hesitation. The skeleton called martial arts a barrier. For it, limits had broken long ago. Its words weren't hollow. Retsu stood still, shaken. That voice was familiar. A realization formed. A memory returned. The monastery steps. The call of a young voice. A warm reply. The figure from the past smiled. Retsu remembered that day. His master had answered. At the temple, Retsu trained under a master who saw him as a son. The young student had grown. Now, he had surpassed the one who first taught him. The master spoke with pride but admitted his own pride hurt. He wanted more strength. His path led to Tokyo, a place where warriors gathered. He couldn't stay behind. Retsu questioned the choice. The master called him a frog in a well. He reminded Retsu that the world was vast. A new path must always be challenged. Retsu attacked with full force, his training sharp and fierce. The master's words echoed in his mind. Chinese martial arts, though proud, were not the strongest in the world. The master stepped aside and blocked without fear. His calm exposed Retsu's hesitation. Why did he stop? That question hit harder than the blocked strike, rattling his focus entirely. Retsu stepped back. The rule against student combat returned to him. The master's voice followed, stern and piercing. This moment of hesitation, this sense of mercy, would become his weakness. As Retsu recalled his master's voice, the stairs beneath him felt heavier. He remembered the words clearly, "Break out of your shell." His journey had only just begun. The skeleton faced Retsu's disbelief calmly. Its gesture was quiet but firm. Retsu demanded answers. Why linger in this world with only bones? The skeleton slowly began to respond. The skeleton's voice was clear. Only defeat would earn the truth. Retsu tightened his stance. No more questions, just resolve. The next battle would demand everything from both of them. Retsu stepped forward, facing the skeletal figure without hesitation. Around them, curious onlookers gathered. He accepted the challenge, calm and focused, ready to prove the value of his discipline. The skeleton unleashed a fierce strike, tearing Retsu's robe. Retsu blocked quickly, analyzing the strange opponent's speed and angles. Muscle met bone in the quiet clash under the arena's stair. Retsu countered with precision. His fist met resistance but pushed through with power. The skeleton faltered. Retsu did not stop. He advanced again, showing the strength of true martial mastery. The skeleton taunted him, trying to break his focus. Retsu remained quiet, watching every movement. A faint memory stirred in his mind as he prepared for the enemy's next strike. A vision returned. A master's words echoed inside him. Retsu steadied his stance, recalling pain and discipline. This was not fear. It was a moment shaped by his past training. With firm control, Retsu struck forward. His fist connected with the skeleton's ribs. The blow echoed through the arena. This time, Retsu did not wait. He grabbed and pulled with force. The skeleton mocked Retsu's strike, claiming no injury. Retsu watched calmly. He understood that strength alone would not bring this opponent down. Timing and placement would decide the fight's result. Retsu's fingers moved fast, aiming between bones. The skeleton's ribs cracked but stayed firm. Retsu stayed locked in close, testing gaps and angles. His opponent resisted, standing firm against pressure. Without hesitation, Retsu stepped back and struck low. His kick connected clean under the ribcage. The skeleton's body lifted off the ground. Retsu's eyes never left the falling frame. Retsu explained joint limits during combat. He stepped in, striking the skeleton's frame. Bones cracked under precision. The crowd looked on as Retsu's movement became sharp and quick around him. He spun faster, landing a series of focused kicks. The skeleton staggered under pressure. Onlookers gasped as Retsu continued. His rhythm was steady, and his strikes were placed with control. The undead shifted. He spoke clearly and remembered details. Spectators whispered. Retsu stared. The skeleton claimed identity, not as a mindless corpse, but something that thought and remembered before death. Retsu watched the rising leg with full attention. The skeleton spoke of unlocking strength through unnatural angles. He claimed no limit bound his body. Retsu braced for the next strike. The skeleton launched an axe kick from above, aiming for a clean break. Retsu stepped inside the motion. The ground cracked between them. Their strength met again without retreat. The skeleton explained his state. He had removed every limit, every shield. No longer hiding behind flesh or form, he now stood bare, claiming his body was weapon and armor. The skeleton described his transformation. He had removed every layer of defense. He compared his exposed bones to weapons, sharp and solid. Retsu remained still, focused on the explanation. Spectators stepped back in fear. The skeleton's posture changed. He claimed his body alone could shatter defenses. His arm lifted. He spoke calmly, declaring intent to challenge the Kaiou directly. The skeleton's eyes fixed on Retsu. He promised his next strike would test the title. He asked if Retsu believed he could survive. Retsu did not speak or move. The arena fell silent. The skeleton prepared his strike. Around them, onlookers watched with concern. His form shifted. The challenge was set. Retsu stood ready without a single step back. The skeleton began twisting his arms unnaturally. He moved joints in ways no living body could. Spectators whispered. His focus stayed on Retsu. The attack was building, fast and sharp. The skeleton launched forward. His bones curved through the air. Even at Retsu's level, a direct block seemed too risky. The strike approached with precision, speed, and no hesitation. The strike landed. The skeleton's fingers pressed firmly into Retsu's face. His eyes widened. The arena paused. Even still, his body stayed planted. His expression remained focused, not broken. Retsu held the grip tightly. No reaction escaped him. Across from him, the skeleton smiled. He believed victory was his. Around them, light shimmered. The moment was not finished yet. The skeleton moved fast again. Retsu answered without hesitation. Their bodies clashed in midair. Dust circled the ground. Their forms spun together. Neither fighter let up as the duel continued. Retsu shifted. His form flowed without tension. The attack passed through where he stood. The skeleton's eyes widened. He could not tell if Retsu had dodged or simply moved. Confusion spread among the crowd. The skeleton swore his hit connected. Retsu had not flinched. The movement was real. His stillness made the strike feel light, almost without weight. The answer became clear. Retsu had entered Shaori. It was the ultimate relaxation. His body moved freely. Even sharp weapons failed against it. Only a few ever reached this level. The skeleton was stunned. Retsu had mastered Shaori at his age. It seemed unbelievable. The skeleton's voice wavered. He questioned if Retsu's skill came from nature or something else. Retsu explained his path. After leaving the temple, he entered the underground arena. He faced defeat often. Each loss shaped him. Through hardship, he pushed Chinese martial arts forward. Retsu pointed to his body. He kept his human form. He believed humans could still surpass limits. He prepared to show proof. His stance tightened. The match was not over. Retsu declared his intent. He would crush his opponent. The skeleton grinned at the challenge. With tension rising, both prepared their next moves, neither willing to back away first. The skeleton twisted forward. He welcomed Retsu's aggression. With energy renewed, he pushed ahead. His goal was clear. He would fight again, not just survive but win through will. Retsu focused on speed. Every joint activated. His limbs moved in sync. This was modern karate at full strength. His technique was sharpened, direct and fast without wasted motion. The skeleton raised his leg high. Retsu responded with power. He drew strength from memory and focus. His body shifted. A final strike was forming at full speed and force. Their attacks collided. Retsu moved in first. The impact shattered bones. The skeleton's body cracked apart. The force spread fast. The fight reached its most violent point so far. Retsu stood firm. His voice rose. The technique was named. With clear eyes and controlled breath, he delivered it fully. A direct blow. He called it the Mach Punch. Retsu's Mach Punch shattered the skeleton's body completely. Bone fragments scattered across the arena. He stood firm, saying this was the first time he put that punch into practice. The skeleton acknowledged it with respect. He called it excellent. He recognized the punch as a technique from a great Japanese rival. Retsu quietly confirmed the name Mach Punch. The skeleton kept his word. He began sharing his story. After leaving the temple, he went to Tokyo but lost badly in Taiwan. That defeat changed everything for him. The skeleton recalled the moment he woke. Surrounded by strange beings in an unfamiliar land, he realized he had entered another world. It was the beginning of something unexpected. He explained how survival became the goal. The land was fascinating, filled with new sights and powerful beings. That wonder came with danger. Fear and excitement both shaped his thoughts. As he adapted, his body and soul changed. He saw Retsu's growth too. He praised Retsu for evolving martial arts through effort, without being trapped by old traditions. Retsu stood calm. He declared the opponent worthy of the Kaioh title. Around them, silence settled. His eyes closed for a moment as he gave silent respect. The skeleton's voice returned. If he was to fall, he accepted it by Retsu's hand. His eyes widened. He welcomed the end with no regrets left behind. Suddenly something powerful descended. A horseman appeared from the sky. Retsu looked up in shock. The moment shifted. Another force had arrived, one beyond their fight or control. The armored figure mocked Retsu. He called him weak and offered a place among his subordinates. With no time to reply, Retsu faced pressure from a sudden decision. Without words, Retsu acted. He leapt toward the enemy. The armored man braced, but Retsu's power broke through. A full-body strike landed clean across the towering opponent's chest. Retsu twisted midair. His kick came down fast. The armored man was slammed into the ground. The spinning strike connected with force. The arena shook under the impact. Retsu was caught off guard. His eyes widened as the armored warrior grabbed him. He had struck hard, but now faced retaliation. The new opponent was not easy to read. The knight praised Retsu's bold aim. Without pause, he delivered a counterattack straight to Retsu's body. The strike was swift and sharp. Retsu braced, clenching his jaw through impact. Spectators gasped. One recognized the figure. The knight was feared a symbol of destruction. Whispers followed. They called him the Herald of Death. The demon prophet had appeared. The knight laughed, declaring himself the Headless Horseman. He He called out his name, Dullahan. His voice thundered across the field. Fear spread as his horse stomped with power. He spoke of the baptism of blood. Those touched by it would die. Their flesh would rot. Their souls would serve. Behind him stood the proof, a silent army. He offered Retsu a choice, serve or die. The clock ticked, but Retsu shouted back without hesitation. His eyes burned with fury. He chose to fight, not surrender. Dullahan charged forward on his burning horse. Retsu braced himself. The battlefield shook. The horse's hooves struck hard. Allies shouted from the sidelines. The moment called for sharp judgment. Retsu's body tensed. His gaze stayed locked on the enemy. Dullahan grinned, his speed building. The horse neighed fiercely, flames rising. Retsu shouted, planting his feet to meet him. The armored rider leaned low. His horse flared with fury. Retsu did not flinch. Their paths aligned. The collision was seconds away. Tension rose as power built between them. Retsu stood tall. He spoke of strength, rage, and self-control. His fury rose, but he remained grounded. The armored knight listened, sensing that this fighter was no ordinary man. Dullahan looked toward the broken skeleton. He questioned the fallen warrior's past. Then he surprised everyone. He apologized. He showed respect for the dead and admiration for Retsu's honor. Time was running out. Dullahan made his final offer. He spoke as a knight. But Retsu pushed back, angry. Words from horseback meant nothing. He had earned no trust. Dullahan charged with confidence. He vowed to crush Retsu's head in a single blow. His arrogance rang clear. Retsu remained still, focused on timing, watching every motion closely. As Dullahan closed in, Retsu stepped forward without fear. The clock ticked. Blades gleamed. One strike could end everything. Retsu narrowed his eyes, ready to respond with precision. At the perfect moment, Retsu moved. His body flowed like water. He activated Shaori. The force of the impact dropped clean. The ground shook. The knight had been struck. Retsu stood alert. The knight moved fast. In a blink he gripped his spear. Retsu watched closely. The fight had not ended. The true challenge was still ahead. Dullahan mocked him. He laughed at Retsu's failed strike. He questioned how someone like Retsu could defeat the skeleton. His words pushed harder, showing no respect for the fallen. The knight laughed loudly. He claimed the show was over. The arena had served its purpose. The skeletons were finished. Now he turned his focus to ending the match. Dullahan offered a challenge. Reach the castle alive and prove your worth. He promised usefulness, but his laughter carried threat. The baptism of blood still clung to Retsu's fate. Retsu stood still while Dullahan vanished. The air shifted. Bones scattered. Skeletons collapsed across the field. The grip of the knight's magic had begun to fade from the battlefield. The minions turned to ash. The curse broke. Retsu's eyes narrowed. His body ached, but he stood firm. Victory was not finished. He still had more left to prove. Retsu slammed his fist into the earth. Dust rose in silence. Around him, the last of the skeletons crumbled. The sun began to rise. A long night had ended. The graves were finished. Retsu knelt in silence. His ally confirmed it was time to leave. The village rested now. The warrior promised to repay the shame he carried. They spoke of Dullahan's fortress. Retsu demanded its location. He burned with resolve. Another fight awaited. His scars were fresh, but his goal was now clear and personal. A new warrior stood beside Retsu. His blade was heavy, his eyes sharp. He sought answers and revenge. His target was clear. That man, he said, was his prey. Retsu faced the armored man known as the Robert. Tension rose between them. A goblin nearby spoke carelessly, unaware of the strength standing silently before him. The goblin mocked both Robert and Retsu, bragging loudly. His pride blinded him. Retsu remained still, listening. The goblin's voice grew harsher. He charged without fear or thought. As the goblin attacked, Retsu struck. One swift motion ended it. Blood flew. The goblin froze, realizing too late the power he had foolishly challenged. Retsu moved without hesitation. The goblin's beast flinched as his bandage sliced air. Blood never spilled. Confused, the goblin froze. Robert watched with interest. Retsu had no wasted motion. Robert stepped forward. His massive sword shimmered in the air. Despite its size, it danced in his grip. Retsu observed silently. A man of strength now met steel's grace. Retsu dismissed the goblin. He turned to Robert with quiet focus. If taming beasts failed, blades would speak. The fight neither sought had now become a matter of pride. Retsu refused the challenge. He turned away without fear. Robert approached calmly. The goblins barked orders. Retsu stayed composed. Their power clash had yet to begin. Time was narrowing fast. Robert poured water onto Retsu's head. It was not mockery. It was ritual. Retsu didn't flinch. Muscles tightened. Eyes widened. He knew something deeper was being tested in silence. Retsu reacted with fury. His punch charged forward. Robert blocked it without effort. He named the right. Retsu stood still. The real battle was no longer about strength alone. Retsu recognized the scent and color from the past. Robert had suffered the same fate. He spoke of the liquid, a weapon to fight death, now used for healing. Retsu listened as Robert revealed it was his last supply. He called it a loan. Retsu questioned repayment. Robert instead offered alliance. Their enemy marked both with a curse. Retsu paused. The man spoke clearly. His purpose was shared. He asked to join. Retsu accepted without emotion. A quiet agreement formed. The pursuit of Robert had now begun. The town stood silent. Retsu followed Robert without question. The goblin hesitated. Streets were empty. No signs of life remained. They had entered a place touched by the enemy. Robert pointed to the wagon. It would carry them forward. The goblin asked for direction. Robert answered plainly. The next destination waited. The goblin's role was to lead. Retsu accepted the plan. Robert confirmed their next stop. The goblin stayed uncertain. Their shared goal was fixed. With Retsu cured, they would now move to the next target. Retsu listened. The goblin spoke bluntly. The path ahead was known to bring ruin. Robert would go. Retsu insisted on walking alone. The others held back their words. The goblin raised his voice. He rejected the idea of separation. Retsu gave no protest. Robert warned them both. This journey was not one to take lightly. The goblin spoke the name. They would enter the castle of the abyss. It held no escape. The three began walking toward the dark place below the earth. The group tracked their route across the map. The castle of the abyss stood far south. Rumors warned of danger. None had returned. Still, their direction was certain. Robert explained the travel time. On foot, a week. By carriage, 2 days. Retsu gave no objections. They departed at once. The wagon rolled toward the edge of danger. The horses pulled the cart across rocky paths. Wind picked up. The bridge swayed beneath them. Retsu watched ahead. No one spoke. The road now led only into silence. The cart crossed the narrow bridge. Retsu stared ahead, silent. A memory of his master appeared. He did not speak. The journey continued. No words could change the path. They stopped beneath the moonlight. A small fire was lit. The goblin found alcohol. Robert prepared supplies. Retsu remained calm. The forest was quiet, but their thoughts were not. Retsu took a drink. The flavor reminded him of home. Robert watched quietly. They shared no toast. Only the task ahead remained. The bottle passed without any celebration. Robert asked about Retsu's origin. Retsu remained calm, holding the bottle. Robert guessed the truth. His eyes studied every detail. Retsu gave little away. The fire burned between them. Retsu acknowledged the name. The goblin called him a struggler. Robert stared directly, unfazed. Retsu asked what it meant to them. The question needed no answer. Silence followed briefly. The goblin found a bottle with a strange sigil. He remembered it. Robert confirmed its origin. Retsu watched the fire. He gave one answer. His past was no secret. Robert introduced himself. He came from Brolforia. The sigil matched his kingdom. He declared his purpose clearly. The Robert had taken the princess. His mission was now revealed. Crossing the border had been difficult. Robert admitted it. His reason was firm. He came for rescue, not conquest. Retsu drank quietly. The goblin responded with surprise and confusion. Robert clarified his goal. The goblin questioned his effort. Retsu stayed quiet. Human matters held no interest. Still, something in his eyes showed he understood the weight of it. The forest stirred. Retsu stood alert. Robert reached for his sword. The goblin sensed tension. Shadows moved unnaturally. No one spoke. They all knew something had entered the camp. A wave of force launched the goblin backward. The fire scattered. Trees bent under pressure. Darkness surged forward. The attack had come without warning. Only instinct saved the goblin. Retsu narrowed his eyes. Robert confirmed the threat. The darkness had targeted them quietly. Its presence grew stronger. Now they knew. This enemy did not intend to wait any longer. The mass revealed itself. A giant slime surrounded them. The goblin was already inside. Retsu stayed focused. Robert reached for his blade. No commands were given. Action came next. The slime pulled everything into its body. Weapons and limbs floated inside. The goblin screamed. Retsu studied the motion. If swallowed, escape would be impossible. They had to act. Robert struggled under the monster's grip as his strength faded. The slime consumed his body slowly. He thought it was over until Retsu appeared, his eyes sharp and fists ready. Retsu stepped forward and delivered a clean punch. The strike shattered the slime's core. The force spread outward. Robert's eyes widened. Hope returned. The battlefield began to shift quickly. Retsu closed the distance again. His attack aimed to finish the job, but the enemy dodged fast. A man appeared with a grin. Retsu narrowed his eyes and stepped back. The others urged retreat as the slime lashed out. Weapons failed, panic spread, but Retsu refused to run. He recognized the creature and locked eyes with it, standing firm. Memories of old texts surfaced. He recalled a beast from ancient records. When on land, the slime lost its strength. That weakness would become his key to victory. Retsu grabbed the bottles by the fire. He made his choice without hesitation. Moisture was the target. His calm face showed certainty. This method would bring the creature down. Retsu threw the glass bottle with force. It shattered across the slime's surface. The liquid spread quickly. He moved again, preparing the next strike without waiting for hesitation or response. More bottles followed. Each one exploded with sharp impact. Retsu stepped forward, steady and calm. The weakness he read about showed itself clearly. The slime began to lose its form. He launched a powerful attack. Fists tore through the soft mass. The slime collapsed under pressure. The ground cracked from the force. Victory was claimed with precision and strength. Flames burst through the slime's surface as scorching liquor ignited on contact. Retsu acted without pause. He grabbed another bottle, taking a drink, preparing to intensify the burning attack. The fire spread across the creature's body. Retsu stood firm with both hands steady. The slime writhed under the flames. Weakness had turned into collapse. The heat overwhelmed the threat. Smoke filled the air. Flames reached the trees. Retsu remained calm. The creature melted into steam. Watching from afar, the swordsman realized this battle had ended with perfect execution. The goblin sat stunned, thankful to survive. Retsu observed the remains. Most of the slime had evaporated. The swordsman stared in silence. A thought surfaced, filled with cautious concern. He remembered the term used for beings like Retsu, a struggler, one who changes fate. The swordsman frowned. Such power was not ordinary. He wondered if Retsu brought danger. Before thought settled, another enemy appeared. Retsu turned quickly. A blade struck toward him. Calm and ready, he responded. A mistake had been made by one who did not understand him. The armored warrior raised his sword, now crackling with power. His presence shifted. Retsu stared carefully. The goblin trembled. They sensed it together. This was no ordinary opponent. The warrior's sword began glowing. Lightning pulsed from the blade. Magical strength surged. Retsu kept his stance. He measured the danger. The name of the attack rang through the air. The blade struck fast with charged force. Retsu met the blow with precision. Sparks flew between them. A powerful clash began. Neither side gave way. The real fight had started. The warrior shouted the attack's name. Lightning burst forth. The goblin panicked, but Retsu stood still. He faced the storm head-on. No fear showed in his stance or eyes. The strike landed near him. Retsu remained unharmed. Confusion filled the air. The warrior lowered his sword. A question followed. Why had he not dodged such an obvious threat? Retsu explained calmly. He sensed no danger. The strike was not aimed at him. The warrior smiled. A test had passed. Their exchange had just begun with purpose. Their blades met the slime once more. It scattered under impact, but smoke rose from the remains. The goblin stared. Confusion spread. No one was sure what just happened. Retsu explained the danger. The slime could split, regenerate, and attach. Its body was liquid and sticky. Only destroying the core would stop its return. The warning was clear. The warrior thanked Retsu. He was surprised. Retsu looked back. He warned about turning away too soon. The battle was not just strength. Caution was also required to survive. Retsu introduced himself calmly. Robert responded with respect. The goblin, however, grew angry. He accused them of using him. Tension rose again as the truth of the plan unfolded. The goblin claimed he was bait. The warrior responded with sarcasm. The carriage burned behind them. Each explained what happened. It was clear luck played a role in survival. The mood shifted. Retsu was addressed with new respect. A question followed. Could he ride a horse? He looked ahead. The journey was not over. He was ready to continue. Robert stayed quiet during battle. The knight voiced doubt. He suspected Robert refused to cast spells. On horseback, they continued forward while suspicion formed between those who should be allies. The knight revealed a secret. Royal weapons held power from a princess. Robert had taken it all. The blade was magical. Its history traced back through generations of enchanted steel. If the princess had used everything, the country would be gone. But Robert absorbed her strength. Retsu and the goblin said nothing. They stared forward, minds heavy with realization. Retsu asked Robert if his goal was to save the world. Robert denied it. He made it clear. His only mission was to save the princess he served. Retsu was asked about revenge. He stayed firm. His mission was not simple. He carried the burden of 4,000 years. History and legacy shaped every step he took. With resolve in his eyes, Retsu declared his truth. Chinese martial arts would not be mocked. He refused to let that pride fade without proving its strength. Robert reacted with surprise to Retsu's claim. 4,000 years was no small burden. As they rode ahead, fog crept in. The road was quiet, and caution returned quickly. Robert noted their lack of supplies. They had no carriage, food, or trade goods. The group discussed their options while riding toward the next point before reaching the Dullahan's lair. Suddenly, a loud sound broke the silence. Robert turned. A massive creature pulled an armored building behind it. The team froze as the strange mobile structure approached them directly. A strange creature crept from behind the rocks. It laughed to itself. Robert and Retsu slowed their horses. The creature spoke first. Its greeting was loud, unexpected, and direct. Inside the shop, legendary weapons and magical artifacts filled the room. The vendor claimed to sell information. His tools, ancient and rare, impressed even those used to seeing powerful relics. Retsu noted the inventory outmatched the capital's. Robert observed quietly. The goblin turned to find the fishman soaking in water, annoyed by the odd behavior during a formal exchange. The fishman apologized. He explained his breathing routine. He could not stay out of water long. Retsu blinked in confusion. The goblin answered. Fishermen could not survive full days on land. The fishman revealed a massive scar from a past battle. The goblin admired a small blade nearby. It was sharp and mysterious. They sensed it had a dangerous presence. The blade's tip was poisonous. One cut could be fatal. The vendor warned them. These were weapons for masters. He asked if they could afford even one item. Robert admitted he had no money. But he reached into his pouch. Instead of coins, he presented a glowing stone. It wasn't cash, but it held serious value. Robert revealed the shiny gem. The fishman was impressed. The goblin panicked. The stone was rare. Everyone questioned how he had it. Robert said it was given by the king. Robert explained calmly. It was travel money from the royal court. The others were stunned. The fishman grew flustered and returned to his bath without hesitation or further complaint. As steam rose, the fishman offered a deal. He told them they could take anything. It was his way of apologizing for the earlier misunderstanding and strange behavior. The goblin asked about the fishman's missing body. Calmly, the fishman explained. He was once an adventurer, wounded by a Dullahan. He had survived what few others could escape. He was called the one who escaped the abyss. He used magic to replace lost parts. Water alone could not stop the cursed blood. His tale left them silent. Now a traitor, he offered help. Retsu said they were headed for the Headless Horseman. The fishermen paused. Their next destination was clear. They were going into the abyss. Robert offered healing potions before departure. He warned them for their own safety. Retsu listened silently. The others urged caution. The danger ahead was serious. The mood turned heavier. Retsu remained quiet. He stood firm. He refused the offer. They told him his clothes wouldn't protect him, but he didn't care. He was prepared for what lay ahead. Retsu replied with calm strength. He said too much gear would slow them down. Then he thanked them. The decision was made. He would face it as he was. The fishman reflected on his past. He had taken risks too. He couldn't stop them now. He simply watched them ride away, understanding their decision without judgment or resistance. Robert confirmed their next move. After the Dullahan, they would return. The group rode under moonlight heading into unknown lands. Their mission was set. The path had no certainty. They reached an ancient structure covered in vines. If the merchant was correct, this was the abyss. No one spoke. The entrance stood quiet, waiting for them to begin. They stepped inside the abyss entrance. Robert called out, but no one answered. The chamber was silent. Vines covered the walls. Then, hidden in the shadows, a statue watched quietly. Retsu moved cautiously down the corridor. Strange objects hung from the walls, swaying slightly. Robert squinted into the distance, but the path ahead remained hidden in the thick shadows. They advanced slowly as vines curled across the walls. A loud thump echoed behind them. Spinning around, Retsu shouted as the door slammed shut. Robert confirmed what they feared. Trap. Retsu steadied his breath. No escape remained. The smallest man asked about their torches. Fear thickened the air. Still, Retsu nodded. Robert stepped forward. They would move into the unknown. Retsu led the group forward. Robert stayed close, his sword ready. The hallway grew darker, but Retsu raised his hand. He saw faint light ahead. The statues lining the path loomed. The eyes of the statues began to glow. Robert froze. The smallest man pointed in fear. Retsu narrowed his gaze. These statues were not decoration. Something inside them was waking up. Robert stepped forward and warned Retsu. The figures were not ordinary. Each one shifted slightly. They were guardians of the dungeon. Retsu clenched his fists. The battle was about to begin. Retsu stepped forward. He had seen statues like these during his travels. The design was familiar, but something felt wrong. He stopped talking. One statue started to move toward them. The stone figure cracked. A creature rose from its resting pose. Retsu held position. The monster lunged. Robert shouted a warning. Retsu's eyes widened. The gargoyle launched a deadly attack. Retsu dodged fast and struck. His punch hit solid stone. The gargoyle barely flinched. Robert watched in shock. Retsu steadied himself. The enemy was sturdy. This fight would not end quickly. The gargoyles rose into the air. Their wings cut through the space above. Robert stepped back. Retsu watched closely. They were heavy, made of stone, yet they moved like beasts. More gargoyles followed. They swarmed together. Robert noticed their pattern. They attacked in waves. Retsu stayed calm. Their movements were coordinated. This was not chaos. The creatures worked as one force. Robert pointed out the numbers. They were outmatched. Retsu saw the formation shift. Gargoyles came from every direction. He clenched his fists. There was no escape. The fight would continue. The gargoyles attacked in rhythm. They struck, pulled back, and returned again. Retsu stood still. His eyes narrowed. He whispered to himself. It was time to use the hidden tools. Retsu opened his cloak. Inside, rows of weapons lined his chest. Robert and the small man stared. Retsu grabbed one with ease. The air filled with tension. Robert watched the weapons fly. Retsu's throw was quick. The blades spun through the dark. It was hard to land a hit. The creatures moved too fast in shadow. Retsu aimed carefully and threw. The blade cut through the air. It struck one gargoyle clean. The impact caused a sharp recoil. Retsu reached for the next weapon quickly. The gargoyle shrieked. Others turned. Robert and the small man reacted with shock. They stepped forward to cover Retsu. The enemies regrouped. The room grew still before the next clash. Retsu stepped ahead. His grip tightened. His eyes locked on the nearest target. They were no longer outmatched. His voice was calm. Now they would fight on equal terms. Retsu studied their movement. The glow from their eyes revealed their path. He calculated each shift. He no longer guessed. Every step brought the enemy closer into perfect range. The blades flew again. This time they hit harder. Gargoyles fell one by one. Their sharp shrieks echoed. Retsu remained still. The hallway was now scattered with broken stone bodies. Robert watched in awe. In low light, Retsu never missed. Each strike found its target. He called it skill. Retsu simply called it the result of clear judgment. The damaged gargoyles growled. Cracks covered their bodies, but their stance remained firm. Retsu watched them regroup. They refused to fall. He gave a small nod, impressed by their persistence. Even with broken wings and shattered eyes, they pushed forward. Robert stayed alert. Retsu adjusted his stance. If they still wanted to fight, he would meet them without hesitation. Retsu pulled two weapons free. His arms flexed. The motion was sharp. With calm focus, he spun both into position. His eyes narrowed. He was ready for the next strike. Retsu raised the tonfa. The design matched a traditional Chinese weapon. He called it a miracle to find them. Holding both firmly, he stepped forward, facing the approaching gargoyles. He challenged them. His voice was steady. The tonfa were built for close combat. Retsu smiled. He wanted to test their strength. The gargoyles answered by rushing straight ahead. Robert watched quietly. His blade glowed faintly. Magic pulsed from its core. He warned Retsu. The gargoyles used more than force. They moved through dark magic woven into the floor. Robert activated a spell. Lightning struck across the hall. The gargoyles froze under the sudden surge. Sparks lit the room. Retsu narrowed his eyes. The magic had changed everything. The gargoyles stopped moving. Stone limbs fell. Some collapsed in place. Dust filled the air. Retsu stepped closer. His hands lowered. The threat had ended, at least for now. Robert spoke calmly. Their weapons must be preserved. Retsu agreed. The room was quiet but filled with broken remains. Ahead of them, another path waited. This was only the start. Retsu tightened his grip. Silence filled the corridor. He listened closely, eyes steady. No more movement. Behind him, Robert waited. A faint light flickered along the wall-mounted torches. The path cleared ahead. Robert stepped forward. Retsu followed. The bodies lay scattered. Robert spotted the door first. He pointed without speaking. The hallway narrowed. A strange sound grew louder. They reached the edge. Below them, a dark hole opened wide. Robert stared down. That pit led deeper. Retsu nodded once. Below was their next step. The abyss waited. Robert looked into the abyss. It was dreadful but amazing. Demons rose from the darkness, spirits guarded the depths. This place was not a home, it was a prison. Retsu spoke firmly. The headless horseman was trapped. There was nowhere to run. Robert and the others listened. The time for hesitation had passed. They would press deeper without delay. They stepped closer to the opening. The path curved into the rock. Retsu glanced back once, his voice steady. They would face the horsemen soon. No more running, no mercy. The prisoner lay chained in silence. Her breath was shallow. The armored figure stepped closer. His voice echoed across the chamber. He mocked her weakness. Her power was still draining. He stood over her, surrounded by glowing crystals. The circle pulsed with energy. She looked up and spoke. Robert was coming. Her voice was weak, but her eyes stayed firm. He laughed. The prisoner stared back. He accepted the villain's role. Robert was the hero. A stolen princess, a final battle, a cruel end. He welcomed what came next. The prisoner weakened. Her power faded. The enemy smiled coldly. He mocked her hope. He believed the story was over. Robert was too late. Her strength was nearly gone. Far above, Robert's sword began to glow. Retsu and the others turned. The light pulsed with urgency. Robert felt the signal. He knew something had changed. The princess was calling. Robert clenched the sword. The chamber shook. A burst of energy exploded from the blade. The others watched in shock. His body surged forward. The battle had already begun. Retsu turned sharply. The ground rumbled. A wall cracked apart. Robert's companion shouted. From the stone a massive hand emerged. A hidden threat had awakened from the side of the chamber. The structure shifted. A glowing core pulsed with energy. The armored man gasped. It was not debris. The wall itself was alive. The creature had disguised itself from the start. Stone twisted into limbs. The form took shape. A massive figure stood tall. Metal groaned under weight. Robert faced it without stepping back. The chamber now belonged to the golem. Robert crawled forward. His sword lay glowing nearby. He had dropped it during the shake. The golem loomed ahead. Its sheer presence was enough to shake the air. Retsu observed the massive figure. The golem was larger than any beast they had faced. It moved slowly but struck with force. The group braced. The enemy began its charge. Retsu smiled calmly. This enemy was different, like the gargoyles but stronger. The wall had become a warrior. He welcomed the challenge. The golem raised its arm to strike. Robert called out as the golem attacked again. Retsu stood firm. The giant hand moved fast, but Retsu didn't flinch. His calm expression showed he had already made a choice. The impact came fast. Retsu moved with sharp precision. He twisted through the force, launching upward. His limbs struck clean. The golem staggered. Stone cracked where his feet had landed. Robert shouted instructions. Retsu understood without reply. Using only his arms and legs, he attacked. Each strike landed with purpose. The golem's body broke apart under steady, controlled destruction. Retsu gripped the broken golem and turned it smoothly. His hands shaped it into a round mass. Lightning flickered above. The others watched in silence as the sphere took form. Robert and the soldiers stepped closer. They praised his skill. Retsu smiled briefly. He had not done this in years. Still, he controlled the form with practiced hands. The shape collapsed. Dust spilled across the floor. Retsu frowned. He had tried to preserve it, but the stone could not hold. It was simply too fragile to endure. They stepped into dry sand. Wind scraped the dunes. Robert scanned the horizon. A desert stretched endlessly. None of them knew how they had left the stone corridors behind. Bones covered the ground. Weapons lay scattered and rusted. Robert picked up a shard. It was human. His grip tightened. The site was not just a desert. It held meaning. They understood now. This was a graveyard. Fallen warriors, lost in battle, buried in silence. The trail of red-stained steel told the truth. Dullahan had claimed many before them. Retsu examined the ash. The bones were scorched, brittle from intense heat. Robert noted the map. No eruption had occurred in centuries. Something unnatural had burned this land dry. The ground trembled. Stones shifted in place. Everyone paused. A low sound echoed. Sand rose in the distance. A dome formed. Robert stepped back. Retsu narrowed his eyes in silence. The ground erupted. Sand exploded upward. A massive force surged toward them. Retsu moved first. The others followed. Dust blinded the path. Something powerful was rising from deep below. Retsu struck the ground. A wave of force spread outward. Dust lifted. Energy swirled around him. The others watched from a distance. His stance held steady, prepared for anything. A moment passed. Retsu looked up. The creature had vanished. Robert and the guard froze. Confusion filled the air. Did it retreat? Was it hiding? The dust had not settled. Sand shifted again. Robert raised his hand. He stopped the others from moving forward. The pressure returned. It was not over. Something was still rising. They had to wait. A massive beast emerged from the sand. Its body stretched across the dunes. Robert stared in disbelief. The creature resembled an axolotl. Its eyes scanned the group without blinking. They realized the truth. This was no harmless animal. It was the master of the desert. The bones around them were its victims. The silence now carried heavy meaning. The sand shifted again. Its tail slammed the ground. Flames erupted from beneath. Robert shouted a warning. The axolotl had started its attack. The group braced for a powerful strike. The axolotl opened its mouth. A wave of fire burst outward. The ground glowed under the blast. Retsu and the others stood firm as the heat rushed toward them. The impact scorched the path. Robert winced. His magic barrier cracked under pressure. The beast didn't slow down. Robert warned them. He had used magic twice. Strength was fading fast. One soldier suggested retreat. The armored man disagreed. His voice was steady. They would not run. Retsu readied his stance. The enemy had power, but so did they. The goblin flew high, shield and bag in hand. Robert stared, confused. No one had expected this. The axolotl turned, tracking the goblin's motion with focused, silent attention. With a loud cry, the goblin slammed into the axolotl's face. Its claws struck fast. The others stood frozen. Retsu's eyes narrowed. The real fight was about to begin. The goblin soared through the air again, yelling with excitement. Robert and the others stared in disbelief. No plan, no fear. Just a wild charge straight at the monster's head. He struck the axolotl's face with speed. The creature jerked back. The goblin grinned. Others were stunned. It was reckless, but not without reason. The creature reacted slower than expected. The goblin knew something others missed. The beast had weak eyesight. It used its tongue to target. If he destroyed that, the beast's greatest weapon would be gone. The goblin celebrated around a fire. Salamander meat sizzled. One stood alone, eyes fixed forward. He had never seen one this size before. Still, he sharpened his blade without fear. With a wild grin, the goblin charged. Others stared in disbelief. Robert stepped forward, confused. The goblin moved fast, dodging flames. No hesitation. He closed the gap between him and death. The creature missed. The goblin rolled back, smoke trailing him. Everyone paused. Silence followed the chaos. Then, from the cloud, the goblin stood again. Even Robert couldn't hide his surprise. Retsu stood firm, watching flames dance before him. The salamander's firestorm came fast. Robert and the others shouted, urging him to retreat. But Retsu refused to budge an inch. The monster's second breath lit the field. Fire surged like a wall. Retsu clenched his fists. He stood with another warrior. The blaze surrounded them. Neither of them moved. Their muscles tensed against the heat. Sweat hissed off their skin. Eyes locked on the beast. Retsu narrowed his stance. He was not planning to dodge. He was planning something else. Retsu planted his feet, assuming the Meiba stance. His arms moved with precision. Calm in the flames, he began redirecting the fire's force without stepping back. The salamander's breath engulfed him, but Retsu's form held steady. His hands spun swiftly. Heat bent away. Robert's eyes widened. A blazing arc passed just inches from their position. With focused control, Retsu guided the fire aside. Spiraling motions broke its path. Embers scattered across the battlefield. No burns touched him. The firestorm lost its shape under his technique. Retsu shifted forward. His palms cut through the fire's edge. Controlled and sharp, his stance proved fire could be redirected. The salamander's surprise was clear in its wavering eyes. He saw its tongue coil. Without hesitation, Retsu struck fast. Amphibians had weak points. He angled toward the temple. One hit, sharp and direct. The giant creature reeled in pain. A clean blow pierced its soft tissue. Blood erupted from its eye. The salamander staggered back. Retsu stood still, eyes sharp. His move had stunned even the watching goblin. A massive beast lunged from the mist, tail crashing down. Retsu stood firm, black hair unmoving, gaze sharp. He shifted slightly, reading its movement with calm determination. With one strike, Retsu flipped the beast, sending it skidding. Robert observed from behind, stunned. Dust swirled as Retsu walked forward, still alert, analyzing the creature's form in silence. Retsu sliced the beast cleanly, unfazed. Robert looked confused. Retsu lit a fire, cooked the meat, took a bite, then nodded. The taste surprised him. It was actually delicious. The sacred items were ruined. Robert knelt by the broken chest, jaw clenched. Behind him, others blamed the failure on one goblin. The king's blessing had gone to waste. The goblin glared back, insulted and calm. He stood his ground as Robert stepped forward. Tension rose fast. Words turned sharp. Robert clenched his fist, ready to silence him. Robert snapped. He grabbed the goblin's collar, fury in his voice. The goblin grinned, unfazed. Sparks flew as Robert's punch launched. One blow would settle their festering problem. Shock spread across the group as Retsu calmly stirred the pot. Steam rose. His expression was focused. Robert hesitated, unsure what Retsu was planning. The goblin remained completely still. Retsu ladled the contents with care. Robert asked nervously. Retsu explained the dish without emotion. It was a simple meal made from scraps, a rare gesture of calmness. The goblin stared in disbelief. Retsu offered the bowl without hesitation. Robert watched silently. For the first time, the goblin smiled. Food, not fists, broke the tension for now. Robert stood determined. He refused to rest. Retsu remained calm as the others moved. A glowing sword warned of danger. Robert sensed urgency. Something was happening beyond their camp. Retsu calmly stirred the pot again. He explained the food's benefits. The others listened. Robert learned it had salamander meat. It was meant to help his ribs heal faster. Robert was surprised Retsu noticed the injury. Retsu explained how. Wisdom followed. No medicine was left. Retsu offered food as treatment. The goblin ate fast, grateful for every bite. Retsu warned that hunger and wounds meant defeat. Robert hesitated, then listened. He sat down. The bowl was warm. He admitted Retsu was right. Quietly he began to eat. Around the fire silence held them. Even Robert smiled. Strength slowly returned. He thanked Retsu. The goblin chewed loudly. Rest came without argument. A moment of peace finally settled. Far away another watched. She mocked the group. To her they were weak, led by fools. Doubt rose. She wondered if the master truly survived their last meeting. A figure gripped a pocket watch. Time ticked forward. Far below, symbols glowed. He declared the end was near. The world, the princess, everything would soon face destruction. The masked figure smiled coldly. He welcomed the audience. The ground cracked with force. A tremor shook the area. Retsu stood up. The others scrambled to keep balance. Robert scanned the horizon. Dust rose beyond the hills. Something shifted. The goblin pointed. Everyone turned. From the desert's edge, movement rustled the grass like footsteps approaching quickly. The ground split. The desert opened like a gate. Sand flew upward. Retsu, Robert, and the others stood in shock. Something massive had forced the land to reveal itself. Beneath the sand, a massive castle stood. Robert asked if the enemy waited. The goblin nodded. All sensed it. They were being watched. Their arrival had not gone unnoticed. Retsu narrowed his eyes. His body relaxed. A challenge awaited. He stepped forward without hesitation. The others followed. Their enemy had a name. Retsu would meet the horsemen head-on. The group stood before the dark gate. Retsu led calmly. Robert followed without hesitation. The goblin hesitated. They sensed danger. This was the entrance to the castle of the abyss. The doors opened without touch. Retsu stepped in first. Robert followed close. The goblin warned them. Retsu replied firmly. If it was a trap, they would walk through anyway. Inside stood a massive arena. Robert gasped. The place was familiar. It mirrored the Reitai tournament grounds. He questioned reality. Retsu said nothing. His eyes scanned the arena walls. Robert drew his sword. Skeletons filled the arena stands. Bones clattered as they surrounded the group. There was no way back. Retsu watched silently. They had walked straight into it. Robert flinched as magic struck. A barrier sealed the arena. No retreat. He gritted his teeth. They were trapped. This had been planned from the beginning. Escape was impossible now. Robert clenched his blade. He believed he could clear them. Retsu held back. He studied the situation. If they were normal enemies, something still felt wrong. It was too easy. The woman spoke calmly. Robert and the goblin paused. Retsu observed. The skeletons in the stands did not move. She declared them spectators. The crowd remained silent and still. The woman sat on a throne surrounded by guards. Robert recognized the title. She was the Headless Horseman. Her voice welcomed them. For the first time they had arrived. She addressed Retsu directly. His strength had proven his worth. She recalled his success in the labyrinth. The skeleton beside her, once a martial artist, nodded at his master. She raised her hand toward the arena. It was built for battle, modeled after their world, a place where combat proved worth. She offered opponents. Victory meant earning her attention. Robert stepped forward. He challenged her directly. He had no patience for warm-ups. Retsu stood beside him. Their focus was clear. No delays. They demanded a real fight now. She smiled at the challenge. Her tone shifted. If they beat her, they would win a prize. Robert flinched at one word she shouted. She mentioned the princess. She smirked as she explained the truth. The princess was powerless now. The magic had been drained. The goblin erupted with rage. His scream cut through the arena's air. The woman announced the start. Light pulsed across the arena floor. A portal opened. She declared the rules. A massive presence emerged. The first opponent had been summoned. The earth shook. A giant monster appeared. Its body pulsed with power. The goblin stepped back. It was the strongest servant, undefeated for centuries, born from the dungeon's darkest pit. The minotaur roared and stomped forward. Chains rattled around its arms. Retsu stood firm. Robert narrowed his eyes. The monster towered over them, holding a massive hammer in one hand. The woman raised a clock. Her voice mocked them. She asked how long they could survive. Retsu said nothing. His gaze stayed locked on the minotaur, completely focused.